I have a sweet at the end of the world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 951 Found a Treasure. After not seeing each other for a long time, Yang Yuan looks much more energetic than before. On the one hand, it is reflected in his complexion, and on the other hand, it is specifically reflected in his skin color. Although he is the CEO of a branch company, the nature of his work and the persistence of a technician make it impossible for him to stay in the office as a white-collar worker all the time, but he has to frequently go to the mining areas in Mindanao and Madagascar. It is precisely because of this that his skin color looks much darker than before. The matter with his ex-girlfriend Sophie hit him hard, but now it seems that he was not defeated by it. Instead, he cheered up and climbed to a new height in his career and ability. When old friends met, after a round of greetings, Yang Yuan didn't say much nonsense. He immediately turned around and took out a stack of reports from the office and talked about work. The results of the analysis of the ore samples have come out. The results are quite amazing. In addition to the main iron and silicon components, we have also found an astonishing amount of titanium ore in the core of the asteroid. And the quality is frighteningly high. We have picked up a treasure. The mining and smelting must be handed over to our department. We have the equipment and technology. The specific data is here. I can't tell you. You can see it for yourself. Yang Yuan was very excited when he spoke, and he almost punched in excitement. Jiang Chen could clearly feel that he was even more excited than when Jiang Chen handed over the exclusive mining rights of Mindanao's minerals to him. Don't worry, all the projects related to minerals are yours. You can't run away. Jiang Chen took the report from his hand with a smile, flipped through it casually, and his expression was slightly moved. First of all, the overview of the Bennu asteroid. This part of the information is the data measured by the Space Launch Center. The diameter is about 500 meters, and the volume is about 36.8 million cubic meters. According to the average density determined by spectroscopy, the density of the asteroid is about 4.5 times that of water, that is, 4.5 tons per cubic meter, and the mass reaches a terrifying 165 million tons. Turning to the most critical part of mineral reserves. According to the identification of ore samples and various return data by future mining, the iron ore reserves of this asteroid are more than 40 million tons, and the grade reaches an astonishing 80. This is a number that cannot be achieved on Earth, because it means that part of the iron will exist in the form of iron alone. The oxidizing environment on Earth is simply impossible to breed such mineral deposits. Almost all iron in the Earth's crust exists in the form of oxides in nature. But space can. These 40 million tons of iron ore will be able to be smelted into more than 30 million tons of steel at an ultra-low smelting cost. Not only is it enough to maintain the consumption of the industrial parks in Anchor Island and the new Malaysia Special Zone for several years, but it can also be exported to the international market on a large scale to earn foreign exchange. Although the value of iron ore is high, it can only be regarded as a drizzle compared to the titanium ore in the core. High-performance titanium alloys and titanium-based composite materials have the characteristics of high specific strength, high corrosion resistance, high durability, and low weight that other metals cannot match. However, Starring Trade does not hold much titanium ore. In addition to the wreckage recovered from the end of the world, most of the external structures of Starring City use high-strength aluminum alloys. As we all know, titanium ore is relatively abundant on the surface and can only be regarded as a rare metal rather than a precious metal, but titanium alloys are quite rare. There are two main difficulties that hinder the development of titanium alloy technology. One is the smelting of titanium alloys, and the other is the processing of titanium alloys. The first is smelting. Putting aside the dozens of complex processing procedures, because titanium is chemically very active at high temperatures, titanium ore is processed into sponge titanium and then smelted in a vacuum arc furnace once or twice to produce high purity titanium ingots. Because of the complex production conditions, the cost naturally goes up. It is precisely because of this that the price of titanium ore varies greatly depending on the quality. Fewer impurities means lower smelting difficulty, and too many impurities are not even worth processing. But in general, the price of titanium ore is still around 1000 yuan. As for the price of titanium ingots, the price will go up. Another thing is processing. It is useless to just make titanium ingots. To process titanium ingots into pipes, plates, screws, bearings, and even aircraft engines, the technical difficulty is even greater. So far, only the Russians and the United States have passed the titanium alloy welding technology. Because the Russians have good titanium alloy welding technology and the titanium ore reserves in Siberia are also high, the wealthy old Russians even use titanium alloys to build several nuclear submarines, which are the legendary Alpha-class attack nuclear submarines that have been controversial from construction to the final service. Not afraid of magnetic mines, it can even shake off the Mk-48 torpedo that is chasing it. Because the cost of titanium alloy production and processing is extremely high, some people jokingly call it goldfish. Only in the strange era of the Cold War could such a ridiculous and powerful weapon be born. But now, with nearly 30 million tons of high-grade titanium ore, Jiang Chen has the opportunity to be a complete tycoon. Not to mention making submarines with titanium alloy shells. Even if the aluminum alloy material of the entire space elevator is replaced with standard titanium alloy, it is more than enough. The titanium ore found on the Bennu asteroid is not only rich in reserves, but also has a very high grade. Even naturally occurring titanium has been found in the ore samples. The smelting cost is much cheaper than the titanium ore produced by any titanium mine on Earth. Even the rich mines in the cold regions of Siberia cannot compare to this. Just for the 30 million tons of high-grade titanium ore, Jiang Chen has to hold this asteroid firmly in his hands. The smelting of the ore is left to you. The second electric ray P1 future heavy industry will complete production as soon as possible and will be delivered to the port of future mining in Xinghuan City next month. You should also train qualified pilots as soon as possible. The production of the Bennu asteroid must be stepped up, especially the titanium ore on it, which is very important to our space colonization plan. After returning the report to Yang Yuan, Jiang Chen immediately gave the task. Hearing Jiang Chen's words, Yang Yuan grinned and patted his chest to make a promise. Don't worry about this matter. Space mining is the strategic development direction of our future mining. Several mining experts in our company have been training at the astronaut training base on Anger Island for almost half a year. It won't be long before they can pass the test of the electric ray P1 driving qualification certificate. Hearing this, Jiang Chen also smiled and nodded. Although the electric ray P1 currently under construction on the Bennu asteroid belongs to future mining, the pilot is a pilot rented by Starring Trade. The main training is the A1 attack type and the C1 transport type. Letting people who drive tanks drive mining vehicles will definitely not improve the mining efficiency. That's the reason. Today he came to the headquarters of future mining for 2 things in total. Now one of the things has been completed and the last one is left. I have one more thing to ask you. Some time ago, I completed the design of the external ore processing unit. How is the preparation going now? Note, regarding the Bennu asteroid, NSAS has just launched a probe to collect samples, which is expected to return to Earth in 2023. No one knows the specific composition of the asteroid, just like the water on the moon has been proven to exist since the 20th century. Science fiction is not a popular science book. I will try my best to ensure rigor, but I cannot guarantee correctness. Chapter 952 Ore Processing Unit. There are many benefits to smelting in space, especially for minerals mined from space. Sending unprocessed ore back to the surface via a space elevator is equivalent to sending useless slag waste back as well. The price of unprocessed ore is not high in itself, and with the transportation cost of the space elevator, it is difficult to be price competitive in the international market. Although the transportation cost of the space elevator is low, it is not zero. Future mining has its own smelter and does not need to rely on selling unprocessed ore to make a profit. Processing ore into finished steel meets the standard of maximizing profits. What's more, there is no need to worry about pollution in space. Non-toxic waste slag can be directly burned when thrown into the atmosphere, which is much more environmentally friendly than those garbage disposal stations that destroy the molecular structure of materials through ultra-high temperatures. Toxic waste can be directly packed and boxed and thrown in the direction of Mercury with a low-power rocket. In addition, the vacuum environment makes it much easier to smelt metals such as titanium ore, which are extremely active in chemical properties at high temperatures in space than on the surface. Therefore, Jiang Chen provided Yang Yuan with the interface, specifications, and dimensions of the external space station of Starring City as early as last year, and asked him to instruct the scientific research department of Future Mining to design a set of ore processing units that can be connected to Starring City. Yang Yuan did not disappoint his expectations, and soon brought Jiang Chen to the laboratory of Future Mining. In the center of the laboratory warehouse, there was a machine with a volume of about 4 large containers. People standing next to it were like ants next to a rubber. The square shape was very similar to the mobile iron sheds that can be seen everywhere on the construction site, but it was a version that was enlarged 10 times. Of course, this thing is not an iron shed, but an accessible space station. At one end of this space station, there is a raised interface with a cross-sectional size of 6x4 meters, which can be connected to the outer track of Starring City as a channel for material and energy exchange. The ore is imported into the space station through the freight channel and processed by special smelting equipment to produce finished ore ingots. On the side of the space station, the trademarks of Future Heavy Industry and Future Mining are printed, as well as a circled FE logo. This ore processing unit is a prototype we customized from Future Heavy Industry. The drawings were designed by us and made by them through 3D printing technology. The smelting minerals are various iron ores. The daily processing efficiency can reach up to 12,000 tons, and the annual steel output is more than 3 million tons. When saying this, Yang Yuan's face was flushed with excitement. With a highly automated design, a workshop only needs 4 workers to complete production. The next generation electric smelting technology is used to replace the traditional steel making process. The recyclable carbon fixation technology can maximize the utilization efficiency of each kilogram of coal and can produce hundreds of products such as high quality carbon steel, tool steel, and high strength A-shaped steel. Combining the core technology of Future Mining, this ore processing unit tailored for outer space steel making has led the world in the field of automated steel making for at least 20 years. It is no exaggeration to call it the crystallization of technology. This prototype has passed the performance test in a vacuum environment. As long as it is transported to Xinhuan City through the synchronous orbit and connected, it can be used. At present, the titanium ore processing unit has completed the design stage. It is expected that the design drawings will be sent to Future Heavy Industry tomorrow, and the prototype will be ready by the end of the month. After listening to Yang Yuan's report, Jiang Chen only asked one question: how long will it take to mass produce? Yang Yuan hesitated slightly, but quickly gave an answer. Before the end of the month, the production line of the iron ore model processing unit has been built. Future Heavy Industry can deliver us 10 devices by the end of the month, and the remaining 10 devices will be delivered in the middle of next month. With a total of 20 processing units, our annual output of the steel plant in Xinhuan City can reach more than 30 million tons. As for the titanium ore model, we have to wait until our drawings are sent over and the engineers of Future Heavy Industry have reviewed them before they can make a design plan for the production line. Well, talk later. Yi Qinghe hung up the phone and leaned back in his chair, his old fingers tapping rhythmically on the armrest, and he fell into silent contemplation for a long time. The microgravity laboratory that China and Xinhuan Trade cooperated on has begun construction. The #1 leader highly praised his efforts, but Yi Qinghe knew very well that the scientific research project worth nearly 1.5 billion New Zealand dollars had little to do with him. He had been on Koro Island for half a month. In the past half month, he had been walking around the 9 islands of New China and Penglai City. He felt like Liu Leo who had entered the Grandview Garden, walking and being amazed all the way. People drove zero-emission pure electric vehicles, and the undersea tunnel connected the 9 islands like rags into a whole. People of all skin colors lived together harmoniously. There were conflicts, but few people resorted to violence under the supervision of police drones. Yes, the police drones that they had considered again and again and rejected almost achieved zero crime rates in major cities in New China. The old man's most profound impression of Koro City and Penglai City was that drones had become part of the country's culture. They were the police's helpers. They rushed into the fire instead of firefighters and delivered the express from the logistics center to the bar within an hour. Efficiency is everything in this city, but efficiency does not occupy everyone's life. This country seems to have never lacked imagination. Everything here is full of imagination that only exists in science fiction. Cities built on the sea, farmland cultivated on the seabed, tracks connecting heaven and earth, space stations larger than cities. Yi Qinghua didn't know what they would create next, because imagination never has boundaries. He just took out his notebook silently, and like when he visited the United States and Europe in the 1980s, he recorded everything in this city and brought it back to China for reference. The old man leaning on the chair side took out the notebook with a slightly damaged cowhide cover from his arms and rubbed the footer of the notebook with his fingers. What he saw and heard in the past half month made him both happy and speechless. A weak and poor new country is undoubtedly more in line with the interests of China. But the words weak and poor are obviously far from the new country. In fact, because of concepts such as low crime rate, beautiful environment, Chinese cultural circle, and high-tech cities, Singapore has already replaced European and American countries that are trapped in the quagmire of economic crisis and terrorism, and has become the first immigration choice for the rich in China. At this moment, the door of the room was pushed open. Two young people, a man and a woman, walked in. "Grandpa, are you looking for me?" The young man in a suit and tie bowed slightly and greeted the old man respectfully. The woman opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but the old man spoke first. "Well, I'm a little worried." Yi Qinghua nodded and smiled at the young man. "So, I want to ask how you are preparing." Yizaki smiled confidently and straightened his chest. "Don't worry. I have been preparing for this for the past half month. Even if I'm not 100% sure, I'm definitely more than 90% sure." Old Yi nodded with satisfaction. This project is very important to our Yi family. Now the country attaches great importance to the strategic cooperation with Xinhuan trade. If our Yi group can set an example, it will not be too difficult to raise your uncle's position. By then, our Yi family will be able to produce another provincial and ministerial level cadre. After chatting with his beloved grandson for a few words, Yizaki bowed slightly and left the room. There were only two people left in the room. Yi Yunfei gritted her teeth, suppressed the unhappiness in her heart, and said with a stiff face, "He is not interested in me at all, and so am I. We are not suitable, and I can't do anything." After a long time, old Yi sighed and smiled kindly, as if an old man loved his granddaughter. "I won't embarrass you. Marriage is your choice. If you really don't like it, forget it." Yi Yunfei breathed a sigh of relief, as if the big stone pressing on her heart had been put down. It would be more painful for her to lose face and please a man she didn't like than to kill her. "Thank you. It's okay. Go down." Yi Yunfei nodded with her head down, turned around and left the room quickly. Mr. Yi leaned back in his chair, pondered for a moment, and cast his eyes on the invitation on the table. The new Foreign Space Resources Development Forum will be held on Koro Island in 3 days. As a representative sent by China, he naturally received an invitation. He has already considered what issues should be discussed at the forum and how to help China gain more benefits. What he is a little undecided about now is his granddaughter. Is he really going to give up like this? Chapter 953 Outer Space Resource Development Forum. At the end of January, with the end of the United Nations Outer Space Development Summit, the space elevator of Starring Trade has sent 400 staff members to Starring City. Most of them are beneficiaries of the space volunteer immigration policy launched by the new country some time ago. After several months or even a year of training, they have now been signed by Starring Trade as formal employees, receiving enviable salaries, and entering various positions in the space station. At present, the entire Starring City is still in a semi-closed state. Before it is open to the public, there are still many civilian needs to be further improved. On the other hand, the microgravity laboratory signed by Starring Trade with China and Russia has begun construction, and both countries have generously paid the full amount of the project fee. Of course, it is settled in the currency of the country according to the current exchange rate. In the past half month, companies from China, Russia, and even the United States across the Pacific have sent their salesmen to Coral Island to negotiate cooperation with Starring Trade. From the hot ticket sales expectations, they have seen the prospects of space tourism and the business opportunities hidden behind it. Some of them are international hotel chains like Hilton Group and aerospace companies like SpaceX that are interested in port leasing. Even McDonald's and KFC came to join in the fun and discussed with Starring Trade the feasibility of opening chain stores in Starring City. In view of the large number of companies that came to discuss cooperation, Jiang Chen simply announced the convening of a new foreign space resource development forum, sent invitations to companies applying for cooperation and people from all walks of life, and held this grand event on the first floor of the future building on Coral Island in early February. In the large circular conference hall, dozens of round tables were scattered in a very elegant manner, with precious wines and champagnes on them. The slightly dim light gave the conference hall a sense of mystery and tranquility. Not all the people attending the conference were handsome men and beautiful women, but all of them were successful businessmen. Pick anyone out at random, and they might be the chairman or president of a listed company with a market value of tens of billions. A Versace boutique suit thrown in might not be as expensive as a suit worn by the waiter who walked between the round tables pouring wine. At this moment, these industry leaders gathered in groups of 3 or 5, exchanging opinions in a low voice, waiting for the start of this business forum. Most of the people who appeared here had the same purpose, which was to establish a relationship with the person who convened this business cooperation forum. In the darkness, soft lights came on, and in front of the venue, Jiang Chen, dressed in a suit and tie, walked to the front of the stage slowly, and reached out to pick up the microphone on the podium. Welcome everyone to participate in the Outer Space Resource Development Forum held by Starring Trade. On behalf of Starring Trade, I thank you all for coming. Jiang Chen bowed slightly. Humility always makes people feel good, and applause broke out from the audience. After the applause stopped for a while, Jiang Chen paused and got straight to the point. I believe that everyone has already done some research before coming here. At the last United Nations Outer Space Summit, we have proposed a framework for friendly cooperation. As a permanent neutral party, Starring Trade will provide a platform for enterprises from any country to develop outer space resources. In his nearly half-hour speech, Jiang Chen first explained the scale of the space resource development market. According to the market size of the tourism industry alone, the Future Group think tank has estimated that it is more than 100 billion New Zealand dollars. The prospects for space mining are even more immeasurable. Some time ago, our company's spacecraft captured the Bennu asteroid into the Earth-Moon system, and in the middle of last month, Future Mining launched the long-planned asteroid mining plan. According to our estimates, the iron and titanium mineral resources on the asteroid are in the tens of millions, with a value of more than 20 billion New Zealand dollars. As soon as these words came out, Jiang Chen could clearly feel that everyone present held their breath. Just an asteroid with a diameter of 500 meters is worth more than 20 billion. Not to mention the solar system, there are countless asteroids shuttling around the Earth-Moon system. At this moment, in the eyes of these capitalists, those asteroids are no longer asteroids, but flying treasures. Many people have secretly taken out their mobile phones, edited a text message, and sent it to their assistants. What Jiang Chen didn't know was that because of his few words just now, the stock prices of aerospace companies such as SpaceX, which have space mining expectations, rose by more than a few points on Wall Street thousands of kilometers away. There is only one reason for this, that is, someone is increasing the holdings of such companies. Jiang Chen certainly wouldn't pay attention to how the stocks fluctuated thousands of kilometers away. All his attention was on this business forum that gathered countless capitalists. Seeing that the effect of his bait had exceeded expectations, he smiled slightly, changed to an inflammatory tone, and then spoke. Everyone, we are facing a new continent. A new continent that has not yet been cultivated and is several times wider than America. The unknown never means desolation, but infinite possibilities. What lies before us now is $1 trillion or even $1 trillion cake. Although we can only cut a small piece now, I believe that with the joint participation of everyone, we will soon have far more than we can imagine. When the enthusiasm of all investors was ignited, Jiang Chen naturally brought out the specific content of the cooperation. In addition to the cooperation projects such as port leasing, warehouse leasing, space station development, and space elevator transportation, Jiang Chen also threw a big piece of cake in front of everyone, that is, the leasing of 6x4 space station interface. Except for some special space stations, the external space stations of Starring City all use interfaces with a cross-section length of 6 meters and a width of 4 meters. According to the size specification restrictions of Starring Trade on external space stations, any company can design a space station that meets its own business needs. As long as you report to the Starring City Management Committee, which is responsible for the operation and maintenance of Starring City, and submit the drawings and prototypes, and pass the safety monitoring and qualification certification, you can connect to Starring City for use, after leasing the interface. The ore processing unit designed by Future Mining is a product based on this rule. Starring City has a total of tens of thousands of interfaces, which are divided into gravity section, zero gravity section, and low gravity section, which can be used to connect to external space stations. In addition, space stations can also be connected to each other through specific interfaces. In other words, this ring-shaped city has almost unlimited expansion space. Compared with the space station floating alone in the synchronous orbit, this access space station has considerable advantages. Not only is it convenient for transportation, but you can also enjoy the water, electricity, and oxygen supply of Starring City at a lower price. Starring City itself has living space, and space stations that require staff to stay will not need to waste precious space to set up separate living areas. Going to the space station to work will be as convenient as walking to and from get off work. All the capitalists present looked at Jiang Chen in front of the podium with fiery eyes. The plan proposed by Starring Trade means that all of them present are not just in the single market of space tourism, but even have the opportunity to participate in the deeper development of space resources with Starring Trade. Get cheap minerals and resources from asteroid mining, then use the factories in the Starring City to produce a large number of low-cost goods, and then transport them to the surface via the space elevator. Of course, although they are tempted, everyone here is a businessman, and even if they are tempted, they will not show it on their faces. Projects involving tens of billions of dollars in investment are definitely not something that can be decided on a whim. Few companies have a shareholding structure as stable as Future Group, and even the chairman cannot ignore the opinions of other shareholders of the group. Chapter 954, a contract of hundreds of billions. Mr. Jiang, I'm the chairman of China Aerospace Science and Technology Group. Here is my business card. I heard that you have rented a port in Starring City to SpaceX. I wonder if you have any plans to rent the port. Our offer will definitely not disappoint you. I have heard a lot about you. I often heard that Mr. Jiang is young and promising. Now I see that he is indeed a talented person. I'm the president of Yike Real Estate Group. This is my business card. I hope Mr. Jiang will not be stingy and accept it. I heard that the external space station in Starring City has 2,000 acres of land to be developed. We have more than 30 years of experience in real estate development. I hope Mr. Jiang can consider our Yike Group. Whether it is capital or technology, our strength is guaranteed. I'm the president of Bigelow Aerospace. Haha, it's been a long time since we last met. I also shook hands with you at the Silicon Valley High-Tech Conference. We have in-depth research in the field of inflatable spacecraft. I wonder if you are interested? The speech session ended, and then the exchange session began. As soon as Jiang Chen stepped into the venue from the podium, he was surrounded by a group of entrepreneurs, and a variety of business cards were stuffed in one after another. Of course, the invited visitors were all elites from all walks of life. Even though they were enthusiastic, they were still reserved, and the venue did not fall into chaos. Nearly 370 groups from all over the world expressed their interest in cooperation, and 50 companies reached an agreement on the spot. Following SpaceX, China Aerospace Science and Technology Group signed a port lease agreement with Starring Trade. At a price of 170 million New Zealand dollars, it leased berths for 5 small and medium-sized aircraft for a period of 10 years. After 10 years, China Aerospace Science and Technology has the priority to renew the lease. The Russian space group also subsequently leased 3 berths, preparing to develop its own outer space spacecraft. This kind of cooperation with state-owned enterprises has far greater diplomatic and political significance than economic significance, so Jiang Chen did not rip them off at the port lease price. After all, if you rent a port, you can't avoid the space elevator when transporting things to the port in the future, right? For every kilogram of materials transported to space, a certain transportation fee must be paid to Starring Trade. Although it is not much money, it is equivalent to a long-term and stable meal ticket. However, the real profit is the cooperation with companies from various countries. For example, Yike Real Estate Group in China, a company with a market value of 100 billion, directly took out 1.5 billion New Zealand dollars to buy the development rights of an external space station of 700 acres from Xinhuan Trade. Ambitiously, they are preparing to turn this 700-acre building land into the most prosperous commercial district in the entire Xinhuan city. Converted into RMB, it is equivalent to more than 20,000 yuan per square meter, which is higher than the land price in the city center of some cities. You know, the entire Xinhuan city has not been open to the public yet, and the risks involved are self-evident. However, the boss of Yike Group does not think so. He sent the group's most outstanding salesperson to inspect Xinhuan City. Whether it is convenient transportation or potential commercial development value, it is worth the money. Although it is indeed painful to spend more than 10 billion RMB, if this 700-acre real estate is developed, merchants from all over the world will rush to move into his commercial street, and the money he earns will also come from all over the world. It is not just the Yike Group that is ambitious. There is also the Yida Group that is planning to invest in building a cinema in the Starring City, the Intercontinental Group that is unwilling to lag behind the Hilton Hotel, and the ArcelorMittal Steel Group that is planning to lease a 6x4 model interface. As the world's largest steel producer, ArcelorMittal Steel Group is leading the way in this sluggish steel market, and naturally has its own strengths. After seeing the electric ray P1 mining video released by Starring Trade, they immediately saw the broad market prospects of space mining. It doesn't matter if there is no technology, they have enough money and can ask someone to help design a space station. In the face of capital power, as long as the technical conditions are sufficient, these are not problems at all. After the birth of the space elevator, a lot of aerospace companies in Silicon Valley have exceeded expectations and are struggling to transform their industries. Starring Trade has left them a way out. I believe that after this Outer Space Resource Development Forum, many large companies will come to invest. Designing space stations with different functions will become a very promising way to make money, replacing the launch of commercial satellites. The sea breeze blew by, taking away a little bit of the temperature. Not far from the Future Man building, there is a very unique observation deck. The working environment of Future Man Group is very relaxed, and many employees choose to eat here during lunch break. But now it is night, it is very quiet, and there is no one in sight. The sound of the sea tide was surging in his ears. Jiang Chen leaned on the railing, lit a cigarette, and looked at the seaside quietly, his thoughts drifting away with the sea breeze. Tonight, he signed at least 60 billion New Zealand dollars worth of contracts. Later, because there were too many people, he pushed the remaining social activities to Sun Jiao and other company executives, and slipped out alone. Now this number should be doubled. Sun Jiao's business ability is many times stronger than his own. Jiang Chen is looking forward to whether this number can exceed 100 billion after the entire Outer Space Resource Development Forum is over. Whether it is 60 billion or 100 billion, converted into US dollars, counting the previous few incomes, all the investments in the space elevator have been successfully recovered. After paying off the loan from Future Man Bank, the capital chain of Future Man Group, which has been tight for almost a year, has gradually relaxed. With the completion of the space elevator, Jiang Chen felt that the burden on his shoulders was also lifted a lot. The space elevator appeared more than 50 years earlier than in history. In this way, even if human civilization faces a colonial ship of harmonious civilization one day in the future, it will not be completely powerless to fight back. Thinking of this, Jiang Chen suddenly laughed. He found that he was actually worrying about things that would happen more than 100 years later. It was really, for a long time, he couldn't think of any words to describe himself. At this time, a windbreaker was draped over him. Jiang Chen turned his head and met those sapphire eyes. Don't catch a cold. The slightly curly hair ends were messy in the sea breeze. At some point, Aisha was standing behind him. Yeah. Jiang Chen smiled slightly and responded to her tenderness. Thank you. Are you thinking about something? I don't think so. I just thought of something far away. Not far away, Yi Yunfei was also standing by the sea, watching the two people snuggling together from afar. At this moment, she was wearing a light blue evening dress and holding a bottle of champagne in her hand. To be honest, she was very surprised. This Outer Space Resource Development Forum completely changed her impression of him. The entrepreneurs present were all more cunning than foxes. It was harder to ignite their investment enthusiasm with a speech than to convince a mouse to catch a cat. Even with her experience, she had to admit that the speech was indeed a classic. She originally thought that he was just a lucky Nalvorish, but she didn't expect that he had some tricks. So she suddenly felt that he was not so annoying. As for the good impression, she swore only a little bit, thinking about what her father said to her on the phone. Just when she finally made up her mind and was ready to try to take the initiative to approach Jiang Chen, she saw the scene of the two hugging each other. The determination that was finally made was also gone with the wind before it started. Yi Yunfei let out a sigh of relief as she relaxed her lips. That's fine. She muttered something meaningless, tilted the glass slightly, poured the champagne into the sea, and turned away. Chapter 955 Changing the World. Pushing the contract signing with major companies to Xia Xiao does not mean that Jiang Chen can be freed from all social activities. At the end of this business forum, as the host, he must of course go on stage again to give a closing speech and shake hands with every visitor at the entrance of the venue. Hello, Mr. Jiang. A young man with a smile came forward and extended his hand from a distance. Seeing that he looked a little unfamiliar, Jiang Chen shook his hand and asked in confusion, "Who are you?" "I'm Yuzuki, the president of Yi Group. I have heard of Mr. Jiang for a long time. Although I have signed a cooperation agreement with you, I'm sorry that I didn't meet you just now, so I thought of coming to say hello to you." Shaking Jiang Chen's hand, Yuzuki smiled gracefully. It turned out to be a member of the Yi family. After searching his memory carefully, the Yi Group seemed to be engaged in aerospace engines and industrial machine tools. It was also a listed company with state-owned background, with a market value of more than 50 billion. Before the Outer Space Resource Development Forum was held, they had contacted Starring Trade many times. It seemed that the Chinese had made a move on them. They were quite interested in the electric propulsion technology and ion jet cutting technology of the electric ray P1, and even offered a sky-high price of 10 billion RMB. However, the two sides failed to reach an agreement on technology transfer. In the end, they retreated and set their sights on the RM-320 rocket engine that Starring Trade had sold to Russia. The materials used in the combustion chamber that can withstand 500 atmospheres of pressure. The engine designed with a thrust-to-value ratio of 1:300, and the aviation fuel that is several times stronger than unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine. Although the era of chemical rockets has ended, these technologies can be used in aviation engines used in missiles and aircraft. Since the RM-320 can be sold to the Russians, Jiang Chen will certainly not be stingy about selling it to Chinese companies with a broader market. For this technology, the Yi family also spent a lot of money, taking out 7.5% of the shares from the Yi Group as the price of exchanging the RM-320 engine and its related technical information. Although the Yi Group's annual profit is only about 2 billion yuan, after obtaining the full set of RM-320 technology, its future appreciation expectations are quite amazing. They not only produce engines for space rockets, but also involve missiles, aircraft and other military projects. Future Group is equivalent to technology investment, but because of the sensitive projects involved, these shares only enjoy dividend rights and cannot be sold in the secondary market within 2 years. Hiding the expression of realization behind a smile, Jiang Chen shook his hand in a friendly manner and said with a pleasant face, "Mr. Yi is too modest. It is also our honor to develop the vast Chinese market with you." There were not many polite words. After a few pleasantries, Yizaki took the initiative to say goodbye to him. This newcomer of the Yi family left a good impression on Jiang Chen, at least better than that little girl Yi Yunfei, which can be regarded as a reversal of the image of the new generation of the Yi family in Jiang Chen's mind. The children of aristocratic families are not all fools. Then he sent off several groups of guests. Facing the empty venue and the cleaning staff who were cleaning up the venue, Jiang Chen slowly breathed a sigh of relief, pulled over a chair and sat down. At this time, a glass of water was handed to him. Jiang Chen raised his head and met Zai Xiao's gaze. Her black hair was tied up behind her head, her face was lightly made up, and her eyebrows were like water, which was very lovable. Her elegant black professional suit could not hide her natural beauty at all, but instead added a few touches of the temperament of a white-collar beauty. Zai Xiao smiled gently and said softly, "You must be tired. Come and have a glass of water." Jiang Chen was stunned. He did not take the glass of water, but stretched out his hand to pinch his eyebrows, as if he was seeing an illusion. "It seems that I'm really tired." Zai Xiao was slightly stunned, and then she understood what Jiang Chen meant. She immediately glared at him in feigned anger, forced the cup into his hand, and said angrily, "You can drink it or not." Jiang Chen took the cup with a smile, put it close to his lips, and took a sip. "That's like you. What you said. Can't I be gentle, considerate and understanding?" Sitting opposite Jiang Chen, Zai Xiao raised her eyebrows and pursed her lips and muttered. If other people in the company saw that the usually meticulous CEO Zai showed such a little girl's behavior, they would probably break their glasses. But Jiang Chen knew very well that this was how she looked when she was relaxed. That expression of "keep away from strangers" was just a disguise of excessive self-protection. "Of course not." Jiang Chen smiled and took a sip of water, then put the cup aside. "How did you get?" Speaking of work, Zai Xiao's lips curled up with a proud smile. "We signed a contract worth 130 billion Singapore dollars. The extra money is even enough to build another Penglai city." Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head, saying, "One Penglai city is enough. There is no need to pay back the tens of billions of loans from Future Bank. The space elevator has been completed, and investors are quite confident in us. Pay back half first, and invest the rest in our lunar colony." "You don't seem surprised." "What are you surprised about? That's 130 billion Singapore dollars. If converted into US dollars, it's nearly 150 billion US dollars, and it's all cash." When saying this, Zai Xiao looked quite emotional. 150 billion US dollars. 4 years ago, she never thought that she would achieve such success one day. If she hadn't met him, the best case scenario for her would be to become a project manager of a small company, working hard for a project of 10,000 or 20,000 yuan, and convincing all kinds of strange clients to stay calm. It's only 130 billion New Zealand dollars. Looking at Zai Xiao, who was fascinated, Jiang Chen smiled and said, "In fact, after the establishment of the new Federal Reserve, money is just a number to us." If someone else said this, Zai Xiao would only think that he was pretending, but when Jiang Chen said this, she didn't feel that way at all. Instead, she felt that he was just stating the most normal fact. He even has the final say on how much money to print in this country. What else is money to him but a number? Of course, although this is what he said, he can't just turn on the printing press at will. Issuing banknotes requires approval through special procedures, and the news must be made public 1.5 months in advance. Moreover, the printed banknotes belong to the new Federal Reserve, and can only be provided to Future Bank and other banks registered in the new country in the form of loans. Printing too much money will cause inflation. Without an open and transparent regulatory mechanism, the monetary system itself will not be able to gain enough credit and be recognized by the country's citizens or even the international community. Zai Xiao curled her lips, not wanting to see Jiang Chen's arrogant look, and snorted with her face turned sideways. Okay, Mr. World's Richest Man, now you are rich enough to rival a country. So, what is your next goal? As she spoke, she raised the water cup in her hand and held it under Jiang Chen's nose, as if it were a microphone. Hearing this question, Jiang Chen smiled and reached out to hold her cold little hand. Change the world. I took the bus yesterday and got home a little late, so I only wrote 4 chapters. If nothing unexpected happens, I will continue to explode tomorrow. Chapter 956, 6x4 Standard and Controlled Nuclear Fusion. The Outer Space Resource Development Forum came to an end, and at the same time, it also kicked off the prelude to capitalists competing for space market interests. A total of 6 large external space stations with an area of more than 2,000 acres were leased to developers around the world. Before all development work began, advertisements for space tourism and space real estate had already occupied the big screen in Times Square in the United States. Jiang Chen even heard that Jiang Group had sold 2,000 commercial houses in the Xinghuan City Development Zone in China before it shipped construction equipment to Angier Island. Although most of the living space is in the ring part of Xinghuan City, not everyone is happy to live in a small living unit. Rich people who pursue quality of life don't care about the 10 or 20 million. What they pursue is a luxurious residence that can overlook the entire city and look up at the entire starry sky. The nearly 30 billion in revenue made Yike's CEO so happy that he almost fell off his chair and hurriedly called Jiang Chen to thank him. This is just the beginning. When the 700 acres of area are fully developed, the income brought by various shopping malls and buildings will not be lower than the income of these 2,000 commercial houses. On the other hand, the 6x4 standard has become a hot search term on the internet for a while. 6 meters long and 4 meters wide, the diameter of the external space station of Starring City. If nothing unexpected happens, the 6x4 standard proposed by Starring Trade will become the design standard for all space station interfaces in the interstellar era, and will be used forever. The power of habit is terrible, especially for a civilization. Unless there are unsolvable defects, the standards that have been accepted by everyone are basically unlikely to change. Just like the not so perfect USB interface, which dominated almost the entire PC era. As the details of the 6x4 standard were made public, a large number of space station design companies came into being. These companies are mainly concentrated in the Silicon Valley area, and most of them are transformed from aerospace companies engaged in rocket launch satellite design. These companies specialize in providing space station design solutions for large enterprises that are interested in building their own space stations in Starring City, but do not have the technical conditions themselves, and help them pass qualification certification. Even SpaceX has opened a similar business, and the first business is to design an automated steel-making space station for the United States Steel Company that can be connected to Starring City. It can be said that a business forum of Starring Trade directly gave birth to an industry with a scale of more than 10 billion. Influenced by this, aerospace-related majors, which were not popular majors in major universities, are now gradually becoming popular, and even a number of branch majors have been born due to operational needs. For example, space station design, biosphere engineering, spacecraft design, etc. In the field of aerospace, the one that is ahead of many major international universities is undoubtedly Koro University. With many halos on its head, Koro University, which was established from the beginning to export talents to Starring Trade, has gradually been favored by other large companies with the establishment of the space elevator. Although it is still not first class in the international academic field, its position in the business field has already possessed considerable weight. Moon Colony. A cargo spacecraft engraved with the Starring Trade logo landed smoothly on the cement-poured apron. The staff who had been waiting for a long time operated the mechanical arm to unload the cargo box on the belly of the spacecraft. At the same time, more than a dozen people in spacesuits walked down from the spacecraft and walked towards the colony under the leadership of a staff member. This is already the 4th batch this month. After the completion of the space elevator, the rockets that are used and discarded are no longer used to travel to and from the moon. Instead, they are cargo ships that take off and land vertically. The supply that used to be once every few months has now become several times a month. Another intuitive change is that there are more and more people in the colony. From the initial dozens of people to more than 100 people later, there are now 500 people in the entire lunar colony. In addition to some engineers and scientists, many of them have professions that have nothing to do with colony construction. For example, journalists, musicians, painters, and ordinary people. Standing in the colony, Tang Weiji looked at the newcomers coming here from afar. He didn't know what the use of so many people was, but he believed that the top management of Starring Trade must have their intentions in making such a decision. It's just that he, the colony administrator, can't understand it for the time being. These dozen newcomers looked left and right along the way. Everything here is so new to them that when they passed a space farm, someone even exclaimed. Although this exclamation was only heard by him. Compared to a few months ago, this colony on the surface of the moon has become much more presentable. In addition to the mines and space farms, most of the living areas and work areas are connected by pipes embedded in the ground. From a distance, it looks like a bunker connected by trenches. Before the breakthrough of shield technology, this design can effectively reduce the threat of meteorites. After all, the moon has no atmosphere, and the entire surface is full of potholes and bullet holes, which shows how frequent meteorite activities are. The entrance to the colony is two valves. Just like the design of most submarine facilities, after crossing the first gate, the vacuum buffer chamber is filled with air, and then the second gate is opened. The group continues to move forward, takes off the spacesuits in the locker room, takes a shower, and changes into casual clothes with jet holes on the joints. Then, everyone gathers in the square in the center of the colony. Okay, newcomers, look over here. Tang Weiji clapped his hands, signaling everyone to look at him. You are the fourth batch this month. First of all, I have to wish you a happy life on the moon. In addition, I have to say that you will miss life on Earth. Take 1 or 2 hours every day to exercise in the gravity room to avoid osteoporosis. Obey the discipline of the colony. Anyone who fights will be expelled. Remember to bring your ID card at all times. It is your ID card and can be used at any time. These are the things you need to pay attention to. If you have any questions, ask quickly. As soon as he finished speaking, someone raised his hand. Where is the luggage? It will be delivered directly to your residence in a while. Do you have any? Tang Weiji asked. Seeing that no one answered, he paused and continued. Very good. If you have any questions, you can consult through your personal terminal. You can ask the AI or the psychologist. These two guys are the only ones who are available at any time in the entire colony. Someone will take you to get your daily necessities and take you to the living area. Before that, let's take a roll call and check the list. The list check was completed quickly, and then Lu Fan got his ID card. The soft graphene card felt very smooth and could be rolled up and worn on the hand like a future mobile phone. On the front of the card was written his name, as well as words like electrical engineer. Under the guidance of the instructor, Lu Fan received his daily necessities and a room key. In the room of more than 30 square meters, he saw his suitcase. However, before he had time to pack his luggage and sit by the window to miss life on Earth for a while, there was a knock on the door. Lu Fan, electrical engineer? The middle-aged man in the colonial uniform looked Lu Fan up and down and asked in an inquiring tone. Yes. Lu Fan nodded politely and asked, any questions? After receiving a positive answer, the middle-aged man grinned and patted his shoulder. Haha, you are finally here. Let me introduce myself. My name is Hibao. The colony is preparing to replace the line. In order to avoid any problems, our power department is very short of manpower. I just applied to the headquarters to send an electric engineer some time ago, but I didn't expect that the person would be sent so quickly. Come on, don't worry about the luggage for now. Let me go somewhere. Wait, replace the line? Why do you want to replace the line suddenly? Lu Fan asked in confusion. In his impression, this colony should have been established for less than half a year. The colony plans to build 2 new mines, and the power generation of the solar power station can no longer support it. It just so happened that the headquarters ordered some time ago that we can put that equipment into use. The colony will never lack electricity in the future, but relatively speaking, by the end of this month, I guess we won't have much vacation. When saying this, there was no complaint on Hibao's face. Life on the moon is boring. Not working is more boring than working. The only way to relieve loneliness is to talk to a psychologist or vent your desires with the beautiful robots of future heavy industry. I heard that after the power shortage problem is solved, the colony can start to build some entertainment facilities. It's no wonder that he is so enthusiastic. Although the new Lu Fan didn't quite understand his feelings, he was attracted by a word in his words. Equipment? What equipment? Lu Fan asked blankly. No more power shortage? Before coming here, he had studied the power consumption of the lunar colony. The living electricity consumption of only 500 people is higher than that of a small town with a population of 10,000 on Earth. Although the light on the surface of the moon is strong, a day and night is nearly 4 weeks on Earth. For this reason, Starring Trade has to invest in the construction of a large number of solar panels and power storage equipment. The power alone will consume nearly 50 million New Zealand dollars of Starring Trade's funds every month. Hearing Lu Fan ask about this, he laughed and looked at him with a proud face. Do you know what our lunar soil collection center produces? Rare earth. Lu Fan asked puzzledly. Although we do produce it, it's wrong. He smiled mysteriously and said in a low voice, we produce helium-3, and we have produced countless tons. Lu Fan was stunned, and the expression on his face instantly turned into strong disbelief and shock. Helium-3? Controlled nuclear fusion? Exclamation mark. And it can be used to generate electricity? Exclamation mark. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 957 Nuclear Fusion Power Station started. In the ground command center of the lunar colony, the staff was busy. Today was a day of great significance. The nuclear fusion power generator set placed on the surface of the moon would officially start generating electricity. This not only meant that the power shortage problem of the lunar colony would be completely solved, but also that the excess power could be transmitted to the starring city through long distance transmission, and then to the surface. Are you ready? Of course. Then let's get started. Jiang Chen nodded and gestured, indicating that Kerwin could start. The entire command center was like a clockwork. Everyone worked 10 or 20 times harder and struggled in their own positions. Various parameters flashed on the large screen in the center. Every move of the nuclear fusion generator hundreds of thousands of kilometers away could be clearly monitored here. The magnetic confinement device is activated, and the helium-3 fuel is loaded into the reaction chamber. The magnetic confinement device is operating normally. The superfluid thermal cycle device is activated, operating stably. The deuterium fuel is filled. Ignition. All the signal lights turned green, and Kerwin immediately pressed the red button. The progress bars on the holographic screen filled up instantly, and the power output instantly reached a terrifying 5000 MW. In the spherical reaction chamber tens of kilometers away, the magnetic confinement body had already turned into a ball of light that could not be looked at directly, and the reaction temperature inside it had also exceeded the terrifying 10 million degrees. It is no exaggeration to say that this is equivalent to a small sun. If the atoms that react violently break through the shackles of magnetic confinement, their power is no less than detonating a hydrogen bomb with a million equivalents. If it were placed on the Earth, it would be enough to wipe a modern city off the map. However, everyone present was confident. As early as the completion of the nuclear fusion generator in Penglai City, Xinghuan Trade had secretly used it without the knowledge of the international community. It was not the first time for everyone present to operate the nuclear fusion generator set, but this nuclear fusion generator was independently produced by future heavy industry and was located hundreds of thousands of kilometers away 5000 MW. This is far from the limit of this nuclear fusion generator set. As the fuel continues to be filled, the output power of electrical energy continues to rise. The reaction temperature also broke through 15 million degrees, and after a slight drop, it stabilized at 14 million degrees. Kelvin breathed a sigh of relief, a smile on his face, picked up the intercom hanging on his shoulder, and announced to everyone loudly, Nuclear fusion generator number 01, started successfully. Deafening cheers broke out in the command room, and the staff walked down from their seats, clapped their hands, and waved their fists, cheering for victory. Due to the situation, Jiang Chen also smiled. Unlike most nuclear power plants, after absorbing the technology from the end of the world, Xinhuan Trade abandoned the inefficient steam turbine power generation design and adopted a relatively cutting-edge thermal ion reactor. To put it simply, the positive and negative poles are connected by wires, the heated cathode releases electron beams, and the anode absorbs electrons to form a circulating circuit. However, the whole set of equipment is definitely not that simple. Just like a nuclear power plant is simply to boil water, but in fact, the technical connotations involved are of course far more than just boiling water. How to solve the power generation limit, how to recycle the heat absorbed by the anode for power generation. These are the problems that have yet to be solved in the world. If nothing unexpected happens, in another 30 or 50 years, the world will also have controllable nuclear fusion technology, which will probably use steam turbines to boil water for power generation. However, because neutrons are easily absorbed by light matter, a secondary heat exchanger can be saved compared to nuclear fission. At the same time, the same cheers were heard in the lunar colonies hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. A steady stream of electricity is transmitted from the nuclear fusion generator to various areas of the colony, replacing the solar generator that has to rest for 2 weeks. After using it for 2 weeks, the reaction temperature has been reached, and as long as the fuel supply in the reaction chamber is maintained, the fusion reaction can continue. Although the high temperature of tens of millions of degrees is scary, this generator is much safer than any generator set in a nuclear power plant in the world. The thermonuclear reaction of helium-3 and deuterium will only produce non-radioactive protons, so no radiation will be generated when helium-3 is used as an energy source. Even if an accident occurs, the cost of rescue will not be very high. Even if the reactor explodes, there is no air on the moon. It will not form a devastating shockwave. The killing effect of nuclear weapons in a vacuum environment is extremely limited, far less frightening than its explosive equivalent. Congratulations. Jiang Chen smiled and shook Kelvin's hand. Excellent command. Thanks to your promotion. Kelvin accepted the compliment modestly. After a pause, Jiang Chen continued. I plan to reorganize part of the business of starring trade. Kelvin looked at Jiang Chen in confusion, not understanding why he told him this. The Space Launch Center he managed was just a very remote department in starring trade. Although the budget was amazing, it was almost outside the core of power. Jiang Chen did not explain, but continued. The reorganization is mainly in the aerospace business. The establishment of the Space Launch Center will be cancelled and replaced by a newly established aerospace department. This department is in charge of the interstellar colonization plan and all projects involving the development of outer space resources within the group. And I hope you will be the manager of the aerospace department. Kelvin was stunned for a moment, and then his brain was occupied by dizzy joy. Thank you for the promotion, Chairman. I will definitely not let you down. Jiang Chen smiled and patted his shoulder. I believe you will not let me down. In mid-February, Starring Trade spent $2 billion New Zealand dollars to acquire the Panu Power Company, which supplies electricity to the entire Panu Islands, and renamed it Global Power Company, integrating the power generation companies and power grid units in Singapore. At the same time, Starring Trade's engineering ship once again went to the Equator Line and started construction under the sea base station of the space elevator. It ambitiously prepared to build a submarine cable extending from the Equator Line to Anger Island and merge it into the national power grid of Singapore. All of this is paving the way for the long-distance power transmission plan of the Lunar Nuclear Fusion Power Station. Jiang Chen was obviously not satisfied with the domestic power market in Singapore. While the submarine cable was under construction, he also found the governments of Morocco and the Philippines and asked them to open their own power markets. With almost no words, Jiang Chen easily pulled these two vassal states onto his chariot. Both the Philippines and Morocco agreed to cooperate with Singapore to build a cross-border submarine cable and connect it to their own power grids. The electricity price in the Philippines is the highest in the world, which is a typical example of the saying that the poorer you are, the more you have to do it. Of course, they would not refuse the starring trade that might lower their domestic electricity prices. Moreover, they did not have the confidence to refuse, as the starring trade's garrison in Manila had not yet been completely withdrawn. As for Morocco, it goes without saying that Santos simply recognized his identity as a younger brother, so how could he refuse the request of the suzerain? Moreover, with the recent surge in oil prices, Morocco, which relies on oil imports, is itself facing energy shortages. How could it possibly refuse Jiang Chen? After winning over the Philippines and Morocco, Jiang Chen then approached Malaysia. Chapter 958. Are you sure you didn't report an extra zero? Kuala Lumpur is the capital of Malaysia. As the sky brightened, a private jet landed on the runway of Kuala Lumpur International Airport. 4 or 5 extended Lincoln sedans were waiting outside the special channel of the airport, surrounded by anti-terrorism special agents. This special channel is usually closed and is specially prepared for foreign prime minister level guests, but at this moment, it was opened as an exception for an entrepreneur who has no official position. The Malaysian government welcomed this Chinese entrepreneur with the highest courtesy. Welcome to your visit, Mr. Jiang. As the Minister of International Trade and Industry of Malaysia, I sincerely thank you for your contribution to the Malaysian economy. In the car, the Minister of International Trade and Industry Mustafa expressed his gratitude to him very politely. The Singapore-Malaysia Special Economic Zone creates an output value of $50 billion each year, which accounts for almost 1/8 of the total GDP of Malaysia. The originally remote Papua province has suddenly become one of the most eye-catching economic and industrial provinces in the entire Malaysian financial report. At least half of the output value is contributed by the Industry of Future Group, which is nothing more than Mustafa's enthusiasm. The motorcade quickly passed through this emerging international metropolis, where Oriental colors and Western civilizations are organically integrated, and drove to Putrajaya, 20 kilometers south of Kuala Lumpur. More than 10 years ago, the Prime Minister's office and the Federal Administrative Center moved here. Compared with the prosperity of Kuala Lumpur, this place seems much quieter and more low-key. The motorcade stopped directly in front of the Prime Minister's office. The red stone brick road extended all the way to the door of the dome building. The verdant vegetation and carved street lights on both sides looked quite retro. Before the motorcade arrived, Malaysian Prime Minister Razak personally came to the door, brought his staff, and politely welcomed Jiang Chen into the official residence. When they arrived at a reception room, the middle-aged man with black hair invited Jiang Chen to take a seat, and then asked the assistant of the Prime Minister's office to pour a cup of black tea for himself and Jiang Chen. Mr. Jiang, you have come from afar. I wonder what you are doing. There was a thick white mist rising above the black tea. Without touching the cup of black tea, Jiang Chen said straight to the point. For a win-win cooperation agreement. Razak's face showed an interested expression. Oh, I don't know what kind of cooperation it is, but you came here in person. According to the annual electricity consumption in 2018 announced by your Ministry of Energy at the beginning of this year, your country's total power generation last year was 224.3 billion kWh, and the average cost per kWh was 0.21 ringgit. The energy cost has increased by 3 percentage points compared with the year before. Am I right? Jiang Chen asked with a smile. Razak nodded. Indeed. Are you worried that our country's energy situation may affect the investment environment? You don't have to worry about this at all. We are backed by Singapore. Even if our electricity costs rise, the increase in other countries will only be greater than ours, and definitely not less. Because Singapore, one of the world's 3 largest oil refining bases, is also a major exporter of oil and natural gas. Malaysia mainly relies on thermal power generation, supplemented by wind and solar energy. Although its oil price is relatively cheap compared to other countries due to its low freight costs, the rise in oil prices in recent years has still slightly raised its domestic electricity costs. As early as 15 years ago, Malaysia proposed to build its first nuclear power plant in 2021. At that time, Russia's state nuclear energy enterprise participated in the bidding, but due to the wave of domestic opposition, the site selection of the nuclear power plant has not been finalized until today. The problem of electricity consumption can be said to have troubled Malaysia for many years, and it has never been completely solved. even without the report of the Malaysian Energy Bureau. Jiang Chen can clearly see this from the financial report of future heavy industry in the industry department of the Singapore and Malaysia Special Zone. Changes in electricity prices will be directly reflected in the production costs of steel mills and aluminum mills. Almost all of future heavy industries, high pollution and high manpower demand industries are built in the Singapore and Malaysia Special Zone. But this is still a big problem, isn't it? Razak frowned slightly, and after pondering for a moment, his brows relaxed, and he said, as if he had made some kind of decision, we are willing to give your industry a 5% discount on the power supply to the Singapore and Malaysia Special Zone. But you know, this kind of special treatment is not convenient to be made public, and you must fulfill your responsibility to keep it confidential. Jiang Chen shook his head. This is not a long-term solution. Razak was slightly stunned, and then a hint of displeasure appeared in his eyes. He was willing to make concessions on the unified electricity price, which could be said to be quite sincere, but Jiang Chen rejected him without even considering it. If the cooperation between the two sides was not very important to Malaysia's economy, he would have turned his face long ago. Jiang Chen saw the deep displeasure on Razak's face, but he did not explain anything, but continued to speak with a smile. Seeking special treatment from you on the electricity price is not the reason why I came here today. Since the problem lies between the two sides, what we need to do is to solve this problem, rather than one side making concessions. What do you think? Hearing Jiang Chen's words, Razak was a little unsure. Not seeking special treatment? Then why did you mention the electricity price? Could it be? Suddenly, he guessed a possibility, and looked at Jiang Chen in surprise. At this time, Jiang Chen continued to speak. We have made a major breakthrough in power generation technology. Before Jiang Chen finished speaking, Razak immediately said, is it nuclear power? Jiang Chen nodded and said, it is indeed nuclear power. Although I personally hope that you will participate in the bidding for the nuclear power project, I have to remind you that Malaysia's nuclear power project has not yet solved the site selection problem. At least before 2025, the nuclear power plant project cannot start construction. Razak shook his head. Although it is nuclear power, it will not be built in your country. Jiang Chen said with a smile. Then where will it be built? Razak frowned. Built in the sky. Jiang Chen pointed to the ceiling. You only need a cable from Koro Island to the Singapore-Malaysia Special Zone, and you can enjoy cheap electricity. You mean to connect the power grids of Singapore and Malaysia? This is impossible. Razak shook his head. The power grid involves national security. Although our diplomatic relations with Singapore are good, we don't have enough mutual trust to merge the power grids. It's not a power grid, it's just a simple electricity transaction. Jiang Chen spread his hands and persuaded, just like buying and selling natural gas, our electricity price will be much cheaper than your domestic power generation cost. Looking at Razak, who was lost in thought, Jiang Chen continued, why don't you listen to our offer first? How much? We only charge 0.05 ringgit per kilowatt hour. Jiang Chen's casual words stirred up a storm in the heart of the Malaysian Prime Minister, so much so that he couldn't help but gasp. Are you sure you didn't quote an extra zero? Chapter 959 Power Export Agreement. Most people have misunderstanding that nuclear power is cheaper than most power generation methods. In fact, this is a misunderstanding. According to the survey results of Bloomberg New Energy Financial Consulting Company in the United States, the average power generation cost of nuclear power plants around the world is 14 cents per kilowatt hour, which is about 0.85 yuan, which is almost the same as the cost of solar power generation. Compared with the cost of 8.2 cents for land-based wind power generation and high-efficiency natural gas power generation, the cost of nuclear power is much higher, and even slightly higher than that of thermal power generation with coal, natural gas and oil as the main fuel. Nuclear power can alleviate the shortage of electricity, but it cannot effectively reduce electricity prices. In particular, the safety of nuclear power plants has received increasing media attention. In order to prevent serious nuclear accidents such as core melting, nuclear power plants have to spend more budget on safety maintenance, so that the cost of power generation has been increasing. Unless the scale of nuclear power plants is increased, it is possible to reduce their not cheap costs. In this context, it is no wonder that Jiang Chen's 0.05 ringgit would shock the Malaysian Prime Minister. Converted into RMB, 0.05 ringgit is equivalent to 8 cents. There is no other way of generating electricity in the world that can reduce the cost to this extent. In other words, if the price of electricity is really this cheap, there is no need for other energy sources to exist. Everyone can just use electricity. If Razak knew the cost of starring trade, he would be even more shocked. He was sold to him for 8 cents per kilowatt hour, and the cost of starring trade was only 1 cent at most. The proven reserves of helium-3 on the moon are as high as 1 million tons, and 100 tons are enough for the world to use for a year. As for the deuterium needed for the reaction, the reserves in the ocean are even more abundant. As long as the refining technology is in place, the cost can be completely ignored. In short, after hearing Jiang Chen's offer, the Prime Minister was completely unsettled. Controlling his rapid breathing, he was silent for a moment and spoke. "Can't we build that nuclear power plant in our country?" Razak has made up his mind. Even if the entire Malaysian parliament votes against the nuclear power project, he will persuade those parliamentarians one by one to nod in favor of the project. This is too important for Malaysia. Not only is it related to the cost of living of the people, the price of electricity directly affects the cost of industrial production. If the price of electricity can be reduced, more international companies will come to build factories and invest. Moreover, the fiscal subsidies made by the Malaysian government on electricity bills every year can also be completely withdrawn. This considerable budget will be able to be transferred to education, medical care and other fields. However, Jiang Chen shook his head. It makes no sense to build a nuclear power plant in your country. The energy required by the nuclear power plant requires a mineral from the moon. This mineral is not very convenient to transport. In short, building this nuclear power plant in space is far more beneficial than building it on the surface. What's more, in space, we don't have to worry about nuclear leaks at all. Jiang Chen's words made Razak fall silent again. On the one hand, he was tempted by Jiang Chen's offer, but on the other hand, he was worried that this might force local power generation companies in Malaysia to go bankrupt, making it impossible for Malaysia to get rid of the cheap electricity from starring trade. Jiang Chen was not in a hurry. He responded immediately, leaning back leisurely in his chair, taking a sip of tea. The black tea had warmed up a lot at this time. While leisurely sipping the tea, Jiang Chen quietly waited for Razak's reply. It would be best to get a satisfactory answer from the Prime Minister. If not, he could only spend some time to contact Malaysian parliamentarians and politicians and offer enough benefits to force the Prime Minister to compromise on the issue of the power grid from the side. In addition, he had many means to use with the two major media tools of Future Man 1.0 and Virtual Reality Network. He just needed to let the Malaysian people know that they had hoped to use the electricity price of 0.05 ringgit, but because of the Pi transaction between the Prime Minister and other black-hearted businessmen, the cheap electricity could not enter the domestic market. Jiang Chen looked at Razak quietly, waiting for him to make a decision. After waiting for about 10 minutes, the Prime Minister's expression relaxed and he spoke. "It's no problem to build an undersea cable, and it's no problem to connect to the Malaysian power grid from Singapore and Malaysia, but in the first year we are willing to import 26 to 30 billion kilowatt hours of electricity from you. The National Electricity Authority and TNB Power Company will discuss the specific cooperation plan with you. 26 billion kilowatt hours is equivalent to 10% of Malaysia's annual electricity consumption. According to the export price of 0.05 ringgit, the Malaysian Power Grid Operating Unit will pay starring trade 1.3 billion ringgit in foreign exchange per year, which is equivalent to 2 billion yuan. As for TNB, it is Malaysia's power giant, and they basically manage the power grid. Jiang Chen believes that they have no reason to refuse this electricity export agreement with such high profits. Jiang Chen believes that within a year, TNB will find excuses to shut down several high-emission power stations, and then take the initiative to come to the door and ask to sell more to themselves. 0.05 ringgit of electricity. 1 threshold, it is 0.1 ringgit. If you don't make money, are you still a capitalist? After leaving the Prime Minister's office with satisfaction, the Malaysia branch of Starring Trading had already sent a special car to wait at the door. After Jiang Chen got in the car, he asked the driver to take him to Kuala Lumpur and parked at the door of a Hilton hotel in downtown Kuala Lumpur. Because he had to negotiate the specific contract of submarine cables and export electricity with the National Electricity Bureau and TNB Power Company, he had to temporarily change his round-trip plan for the day and chose to stay in Malaysia for one more day. He walked straight to the hotel counter. When he took out the black diamond card that Noseta gave him, the hotel manager immediately vacated a presidential suite for him and respectfully sent him to the door of the room. After checking into the room, Jiang Chen first took off his formal clothes and took a shower, changed into casual clothes, and sat on the sofa in the living room. He opened a bottle of red wine, turned on the home theater, and Jiang Chen held the remote control and randomly picked a movie he had never seen. Guns and blood are always the theme of Hollywood action blockbusters, and they are also the most eye-catching part of the audience. Jiang Chen's favorite movies on weekdays are also these kinds of movies. Without explosions, can it still be called a Hollywood blockbuster? After watching for about 30 to 40 minutes, the film reached its climax, with a police gangster gunfight on the screen. Jiang Chen stared at the screen intently, enjoying the movie, but a police bell rang in his ears. Police bell? Jiang Chen was slightly stunned and looked out the window. The police bell did not seem to come from the home theater speakers, but from the street downstairs outside the window. What happened outside? There must be at least 6 or 7 police cars with such a lot of police bells. Curious, Jiang Chen picked up the remote control to pause the movie, walked to the window and looked out. There was a shopping mall building halfway down the street, and a row of police cars with red and blue lights blocked the entrance of the mall. Jiang Chen's expression was a little strange. What a coincidence, I was watching a police and gangster movie just now, and a police and gangster confrontation was staged outside. 4th update. Please support with monthly tickets. Chapter 960 Hostage Crisis. The hostage hijacking incident alarmed the Kuala Lumpur police headquarters and the Malaysian federal government 20 kilometers away. The Kuala Lumpur chief of police arrived at the scene immediately, followed by the head of the Malaysian National Counter-Terrorism Office, the anti-terrorism expert from the army, and the Prime Minister's chief of staff Miss Bab. Not far behind the police explosion-proof vehicle, these people urgently held a combat meeting to discuss how to deal with the terrorists in the shopping mall building. There are 9 terrorists in the mall. They control the 4th, 5th, and 6th floors, and hold a total of 79 hostages. Chief of Police Miyake reported anxiously. When will our anti-terrorist team arrive? Already on the way. Where are the cameras in the mall? We need to confirm the location of the hostages and the terrain of the mall building. Where is the contractor who built this building? Find them. I need the blueprints of the building. Looking at the map provided by the person in charge of the mall, the anti-terrorism expert frowned. This thing is useless. This kind of map for tourists does not even mark the location of the surveillance, let alone the load-bearing structure of the building. Not knowing where the load-bearing structure is, they have to rely on their intuition to judge the amount of explosives and the risks when they encounter places that need to be blasted, which undoubtedly increases the danger of the operation. We have contacted the construction contractor, and they said they will send the drawings within half an hour. The location of the hostages. This is a bit difficult, Miyake said with sweat on his forehead. Difficult? Jaffa, the head of the counter-terrorism office, frowned. The other party has obviously made a careful plan. Not only did they cut off the power supply of the building, but they also cut off all connections between the monitoring lines and the outside world. We can only see a piece of white snow here. The person in charge of the shopping mall building said with a wry smile. These terrorists are obviously well prepared. Chief of Staff Miss Ba looked at his watch, looked in the direction of the Hilton Hotel, took a deep breath, and walked to Jaffa. Listen, I need you to solve this problem in the shortest time, and in the cleanest way. Jaffa immediately shook his head. The shortest time. Don't talk nonsense. There are 79 hostages inside. Unless the Prime Minister is willing to take responsibility for the safety of the hostages, Miss Ba lowered his voice. I know this is difficult, but there are foreign guests in the Hilton Hotel next door, and they are of a very high level. Foreign guests? What foreign guests? Jaffa frowned. The rich man in the Singapore Malaysia special area. You should know who he is, even if I don't say his name. And just now, he and the Prime Minister have negotiated a big deal involving more than $1 billion US, which is related to power projects and TNB. Miss Ba took a deep breath and looked in the direction of the mall. We can't let you have concerns about our investment environment. We must solve this hostage crisis in the shortest time, otherwise, someone will definitely stand up and take responsibility in the end. Jaffa's scalp felt a little numb, and he couldn't help but curse. Why did these damn scum choose this time and this place? You can ask this question after you catch those bastards, if you can capture them. Sighing, Miss Ba looked at his watch again, and then looked at the chief of police. Someone has to go and calm the foreign guests. At least let them know that this is just an accident and does not represent the security environment of Malaysia as a whole. This is the 21st floor of the Hilton Hotel, which overlooks the entire scene. Jiang Chen moved a chair over and sat by the glass window of the balcony, watching the confrontation between the police and the robbers with interest. This is much more interesting than watching a movie. The police parked the police car across the passage outside the mall, holding a pistol and squatting nervously behind the police car that served as a cover. The police wearing bulletproof vests held a megaphone and huddled behind the explosion-proof car, shouting to the robbers in the mall. The Kuala Lumpur police pulled open the yellow seal and evacuated the crowd on the street. The entire street was urgently blocked, including the entrance to the Hilton Hotel. It has to be said that there are still many people who are not afraid of death. Outside the cordon, the crowd was densely packed. In addition to the reporters from the newspapers, many citizens were also holding their mobile phones to record the scene. With so many cameras facing them, the police were a little embarrassed. This is a big city in Southeast Asia. Such a serious hijacking incident has made international headlines. Jiang Chen called the bodyguard who was standing guard at the door of the room downstairs and asked him to go downstairs to ask what happened there. Not far away, the police and the gangsters were in a stalemate. The hostages in the mall made them cautious, and the demands made by the gangsters were unacceptable to them. Soon, the bodyguard called back and reported the situation downstairs to Jiang Chen. In short, those gangsters were not ordinary gangsters at all, but terrorists equipped with automatic weapons and bulletproof vests. A total of 79 hostages were held hostage in the mall, most of whom were mall staff and some tourists who were shopping. The gangsters demanded that the police immediately release the 110 prisoners who were arrested for planning and participating in terrorist attacks. If they did not start releasing people after 5 hours, they would kill one person every hour. Of course, the Malaysian government would not release those prisoners. If they set a precedent of compromising with terrorists, wouldn't it be endless in the future? Moreover, the terrorists in the mall obviously had no intention of escaping. They were afraid that they would confirm the safety of their accomplices 1 second and explode on the spot the next second. The Malaysian police were helpless and could only request reinforcement from the anti-terrorist forces stationed in Kuala Lumpur. Soon 2 armored vehicles drove to the street, 2 Black Hawk helicopters hovered near the mall, and the anti-terrorist forces in black combat uniforms arrived at the scene and surrounded the mall building. It seems that there is no new action. Jiang Chen yawned, and just as he was about to go back to the house, his watch vibrated twice. Clicking on the holographic screen, the bodyguard standing guard at the door appeared on the screen. Prime Minister's Chief of Staff Miss Ba and Kuala Lumpur Chief of Police May Yaki are at the door. They hope to visit you. Jiang Chen was slightly stunned, then he understood their intention and nodded. Let him in. Yes. The bodyguard wearing sunglasses nodded and ended the call. Soon, the door of the entrance hall opened, and a tall, thin man with a European face in a suit walked in, followed by an Asian man in a police uniform. Walking into the house, Miss Ba spoke first with an apologetic look on his face. Mr. Jiang, I'm sorry that we meet again in this way. There was a hijacking incident in the shopping mall opposite. I'm sorry that our work mistakes have affected your travel. If you have any plans To go out at night, we can arrange an armored vehicle to escort you from the door to the outside of the cordon. No need. I understand your difficulties and sincerely hope that the hostages in the mall will be safe. The chief of staff apologized sincerely, and Jiang Chen did not make things difficult for him. He said casually that he didn't care. But at this moment, Jiang Chen's eyes fell on the police chief behind him. His eyes moved slightly, and an idea suddenly came to his mind, so he smiled and spoke. Can I know how the hostages in the mall are doing now? Mayak's heart skipped a beat, thinking that Mr. Jiang had indeed asked about this. Since he had been asked, he couldn't help but answer, so he said, the current situation is under control. After the anti-terrorist forces arrive, we will soon launch a rescue operation. It's just that the monitoring system misbagled at Miyake, and the sheriff immediately realized that he had talked too much and quickly shut up. Although the sheriff quickly shut up, Jiang Chen had already heard the information he wanted to hear. Smiling and nodding, Jiang Chen looked at the chief of staff and said, monitoring? I wonder if we at Starring Trade can help you. Chapter 961. This question is very stupid. Jiang Chen's proposal made Miss Ba slightly stunned, but he soon shook his head and declined. We appreciate Mr. Jiang's kindness. Malaysia has a professional anti-terrorist force. We don't need the help of foreign anti-terrorist forces. As a private military company, the military department of Starring Trade is notorious. It is much more famous than the three vicious dogs of the United States, Blackwater International, Shamrock, and Dayang International. Its three most classic battles are the Panu Island coup, Mindanao independence, and Moro's self-defense counterattack. The combat effectiveness it has demonstrated is not inferior to any country's regular army. This army is nominally a mercenary and a defense contractor of Singapore, but all countries do not really regard it as a mercenary, but as a regular army outside the regular organization. Although the hostage incident in Kuala Lumpur this time is difficult for the Malaysian Prime Minister, it is far from being difficult enough to ask foreigners for help. However, after understanding Miss Ba's meaning, Jiang Chen shook his head. You misunderstood me. Oh. Miss Ba raised his eyebrows and looked at Jiang Chen with an inquiring look. I wonder what Mr. Jiang's proposal is? The terrorists have occupied the shopping mall building and have taken control of the surveillance in the building and cut off the connection between the surveillance and the outside world. If I'm not mistaken, they must have also controlled the backup generators in the building. Even if the power to the building is cut off, they can still maintain the power supply for a long time. In this case, it means that your anti-terrorist forces have to launch a rescue operation under the noses of the terrorists. Am I right? Jiang Chen said with a smile. We have contacted the building's construction contractor and will be able to send the construction drawings soon. We have professional anti-terrorism experts. This is our own problem. Mr. Jiang should not worry about it. Miss Ba shook his head. Of course it's your own problem, but we can provide you with better equipment to increase your success rate in rescuing hostages. Jiang Chen smiled at Miss Ba, then glanced at the chief of police. Are you not interested in the drone produced by Future Heavy Industry? The distance between Koro Island and Kuala Lumpur is not very far. Even a civil airliner can reach it in 2 or 3 hours. Jiang Chen made a phone call and asked Crescent Island to prepare the equipment and aircraft. 2 Beta 2 police drone terminals and more than 20 drones were loaded on the transport plane, and a drone expert from Starring Trade also accompanied them. The chief of staff called the Prime Minister, and soon Prime Minister Razak approved Starring Trade to participate in the hostage rescue. Kuala Lumpur is the capital of Malaysia, and now the media around the world are watching how the Malaysian government will resolve this incident. It is no exaggeration to say that the final outcome of this hostage crisis will affect Malaysia's national image in tourism and investment ratings for at least 5 years, or even longer. On the one hand, the Kuala Lumpur police used negotiation experts to talk to the terrorists and delay time, and on the other hand, they cooperated with the anti-terrorism special forces to prepare to rescue the hostages. After hearing that Miss Ba had asked for foreign aid, Jaffa, the head of the anti-terrorism office, was dismissive and said that his subordinates did not need those toys at all. As long as they looked at the mall map sent by the construction company, they could easily get into the blind spot of the surveillance and rescue the hostages. However, after getting the architectural drawings, his face turned green. At least from the drawings, it is almost impossible to approach the hostages without alerting the terrorists in the building. And there are too many rooms designed on this drawing that can be used as hostage placement points. Not only him, but even the anti-terrorism expert from the army looked helpless after getting the architectural drawings. The media were all waiting for their news outside the cordon. They had been preparing for so long, so it was time to start rescuing the hostages, right? Just as Jaffa and the anti-terrorism expert were sweating in the temporary command room, an explosion-proof vehicle stopped at the door of the temporary command room and a man with a Chinese face walked in. Jaffa frowned slightly when he saw him. "Who are you?" "This is my business card," the man said lightly, then walked to the map with the toolbox, leaving Jaffa confused. Soon, Miss Bab walked in and explained to Jaffa, "This is the drone expert from Starring Trade." Jaffa frowned. "I said, I don't need those gadgets." "Then do you have a better way now?" Miss Bass' words made Jaffa pause slightly and unable to say a word. Seeing that the stubborn head of the anti-terrorism office did not speak, Miss Bass continued. "The Prime Minister asked you to solve the problem within 5 hours. There is still 1 hour left. If the terrorists execute the hostages, you will be responsible for it?" Cold sweat dripped from Jaffa's forehead. He moved his stiff neck and nodded reluctantly. "Okay, let him try." When the drone expert from Starring Trade arrived, he just glanced at the map, took a few photos of the map, and left the command room without saying a word. He dragged the equipment from the car he came in, and began to make preparations. Jaffa watched him fiddling with the equipment, but couldn't figure out what it was for a long time, so he couldn't help but speak out. "The noise of the drone will attract the attention of the terrorists. You are playing with the lives of 79 hostages. Our drones are noiseless," the drone expert said lightly. Jaffa looked at the man, as if he was looking at a monster. "The drone has no sound. What kind of joke is this?" However, just when he was about to say something, the drone expert quickly shut him up with his actions. The drone terminal deployed on the highway quickly opened the cover on the shell, and a palm-sized drone flew out of it and hovered steadily in the hand of the drone expert. If it weren't for getting close, the faint buzzing of mosquitoes would not be heard at all. In an instant, he felt deeply ashamed for looking down on the drones of Starring Trade before. It is also a 4-rotor drone, but the embedded aluminum alloy fan blades of future heavy industry do not have the roar of the drones on the market when they rotate. It's like an invisible hand dragging the entire drone from below. The drone expert used facts to tell Jaffa what technology is and what it means to turn decay into magic. Looking at the drone, Jaffa said blankly, "Where are you going to let these little guys in?" As soon as he said this, Jaffa realized that the question he asked was stupid. Where to go in? Aren't the vents of the central air conditioner roads? With the mobility of this drone, it can go anywhere it wants. The pipes of the central air conditioner in the shopping mall are connected in all directions. Where can't people go? These drones can get in. Want to determine the location of the hostages? This is too easy. Sure enough, the drone expert also thought this question was stupid and didn't mean to answer him at all. He took the tablet and poured the scanned map into it and then set the flight path of the drone along the pipes of the central air conditioner. I saw a dozen drones flew out of the terminal and went around into the dark shopping mall. After doing all this, the drone expert looked at Jaffa, who was confused, and said calmly, "Let your people get ready and start working. The monthly tickets at the beginning of the month are doubled. 1 vote can be counted as 2 votes. Brothers, please vote. There will be an explosion tomorrow." Chapter 962 Drone Order. The battle was a foregone conclusion. A dozen drones followed the central air conditioning ducts and quickly reached the 4th, 5th, and 6th floors controlled by the terrorists. They identified the hostages' positions through the probe cameras and ambushed them directly above the terrorists' heads. The Malaysian anti-terrorist forces immediately formulated a thorough battle plan based on the situation detected by the drones. They were divided into 5 groups and launched attacks simultaneously from various weakly defended parts of the building after the operation began. With the cooperation of the sudden attack by the drones, more than 30 special forces rushed into the building at lightning speed, killed several terrorists in succession, and ended the battle in just 80 seconds. All 79 hostages were rescued, 8 of the 10 terrorists were killed on the spot, and the remaining 2 were captured. Yes, there were 10 terrorists in total. The intelligence of the Malaysian police was wrong. There were not only 9 hijackers at all. One of them hid explosives in his jacket and squatted with the hostages disguised as a tourist. If it weren't for the quick response of the Beta 2 police drone of Starring Trading, which killed the terrorist who tried to detonate the explosives in the first place, the hostage rescue operation would have ended in failure. With the help of the Beta 2 drone, the hostage crisis was resolved without any danger. Afterwards, the Prime Minister and the King of Malaysia repeatedly expressed their gratitude to Jiang Chen and Starring Trading for their help. All the media that arrived at the scene also expressed their amazement at the police drone that showed its power in the hostage rescue and gave it high praise. The New York Times on the other side of the ocean even gave it the evaluation of anti-terrorism artifact. All thanks are empty. If it weren't for the visible benefits, Jiang Chen would not have been idle to help. Sure enough, just after he and TNB had negotiated the power export agreement and the construction plan of the submarine power transmission cable, the Malaysian chief of police found him, hoping to order a batch of Beta 2 drones from Future Heavy Industry. The total value of this order is more than 20 million Singapore dollars. This 20 million Singapore dollar order is not a lot for Future Heavy Industries, but it is undoubtedly a good start. For a long time, the police drones that can carry light weapons produced by Future Heavy Industries have not been able to open up the market overseas. Compared with foreign companies, police departments in various countries are more inclined to seek cooperation with domestic equipment suppliers. This hostage incident is undoubtedly a good publicity for the Beta 2 drone of Future Heavy Industries. With the cooperation of Beta 2, the Malaysian Special Forces rescued 79 hostages from well-equipped terrorists at the cost of 0 casualties. Even if we look at the successful cases of anti-terrorism operations around the world, this can be called an impressive achievement. I believe that those countries troubled by conservative terrorism will definitely be interested in the Beta 2 drone of Future Heavy Industries. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, in the lunar colony, dozens of moondists are working around a football field-sized open space. Steel skeletons are being erected one after another, and workers in spacesuits are kangaroos jumping between various building materials, splicing and fixing the materials with low-power metal jet welding guns. In the center of the construction site is a hexagonal platform. On the outer shell, which is as dark and deep as the universe, there are small scaly bulges. Each bulge is about the size of a thumb, neatly arranged into a net, covering the entire hexagonal shell. The connection is normal. Lu Fan let out a long breath and raised his hand to wipe his forehead. It was not really sweating, it was just a habitual action when he solved a big problem, but this time he touched the heavy helmet. After a slight pause, Lu Fan immediately made a wry smile, gestured the equipment into the toolbox, and prepared to return to the lunar colony. It has been more than a week since I came here. The closer I'm to the universe, the smaller I feel. After the initial novelty, Lu Fan began to miss life on Earth, as the colony supervisor said. The feeling of legs being bound to the ground by gravity can only be felt in the gravity room. After passing through the buffer chamber, he hung his spacesuit at the door, took out his ID card, and swiped it on the scanner, then took a can of coffee from the cashier of the vending machine. In space, he still had to pay for his meals, but his salary was several times higher than on Earth, so he didn't have to be careful when shopping. At this time, a middle-aged man also passed through the buffer chamber and entered the colony. After seeing Lu Fan, he greeted him. "How do you feel?" "Not bad," Lu Fan said casually. "I feel like I came to Australia and became a kangaroo." The middle-aged man laughed and put the toolbox aside. "Yes, we are all kangaroos. Speaking of which, have you been to Australia? The kangaroos are really interesting. I mean the ones in the zoo. The wild ones are not friendly at all." "No, maybe I will consider going there when I change shifts in 3 months." Lu Fan frowned, learned from them the experience of kangaroos jumping. Ha ha ha. The middle-aged man was his boss, Hibaro, the director of the Colonial Power Department. Although he is the boss, there is no concept of superiors and subordinates here. The size of the colony is only about 500 people. Although new people join in every once in a while, it is still just a small place. The entire power department has only 20 people. It is these 20 power engineers who support the power grid of the entire colony, from living units to soilless cultivation rooms. The two packed up their things and prepared to go to the colony cafeteria for lunch. If you want to maintain a good work and rest schedule on the moon, you can only check the time through the watch constantly and then tell yourself when to go to bed and when to eat. After ordering a plate of curry beef in the cafeteria, Lu Fan sat opposite Jiao. Sitting in his position, he could just see the construction site outside the window. Lu Fan frowned slightly and asked about the confusion he had always had. "You said, what exactly is that thing?" Jiao was stunned for a moment, but looked at him strangely. "You mean the one outside? You don't know?" Lu Fan shook his head. "No one informed me. Is it a secret within the company?" Jiao smiled and shook his head. "It's not a secret, because it will be put into use soon. But some time ago, the relevant information about that thing was indeed a Class A secret." Lu Fan felt that his curiosity was even stronger. "What is it?" "A device that can convert electrical energy into light energy and transmit it to hundreds of thousands of kilometers away." "How is this possible?" Lu Fan said in a lost voice. Seeing that the others in the cafeteria were looking at him, he quickly lowered his head and spoke in a lower voice. Jiao looked at his subordinate's reckless appearance and grinned. "Nothing is impossible. Although I was more surprised than you when I first heard about this thing. But after seeing the entire design drawing, you won't think so." As he said, he cast his eyes out the window and said with some longing, "If the trial run goes smoothly, this will become the first specialty exported from the moon to the earth. And our colony will completely get rid of the hat of a money-burning pit." Chapter 96 February on the plane. After staying in Kuala Lumpur for 3 days, Jiang Chen returned to Koro Island in his Gulfstream G650 and began to prepare for the next trip. Shortly after he returned to China, Starring Trade sent an engineering ship to the sea area between Anchor Island and the Singapore-Malaysia Special Zone to start underwater construction. Laying this kind of submarine power transmission line is much more troublesome than building an overhead power transmission line on land, but for Starring Trade, which often engages in submarine engineering, this trouble is nothing. The person in charge of the project assured Jiang Chen that the power transmission line could be completed by the end of March at the latest. On the lunar colony side, the colony director Tang Weiji also assured Jiang Chen through a video call that the laying of long-distance power transmission equipment would be completed before the end of this month, February. On the Starring City side, the device for receiving lasers is also under construction. Kelvin assured Jiang Chen that the entire territory of Singapore will use the electricity generated by the Lunar Nuclear Fusion Power Station by mid-March at the latest. The Koro City nuclear power plant, which has been criticized for a long time, can also withdraw from the stage of history. Jiang Chen spent almost all of February on the plane. After Malaysia agreed to connect its power grid with Singapore, Starring Trade was also negotiating with Australia, India, Japan, South Korea and other countries. As Jiang Chen expected, at 1.2 cents per kilowatt hour, no one could refuse this price with an unimaginable profit margin. Some people speculated that Starring Trade used solar energy, and some speculated that there were a large number of uranium and plutonium isotopes on the Bennu asteroid, but no one thought about nuclear fusion. Because it is too difficult to achieve nuclear fusion, no material can withstand the tens of millions of degrees required for nuclear fusion. The legendary cold fusion has even more stringent conditions, even to the point of being science fiction. In fact, even in the 22nd century, there is no material that can withstand tens of millions of degrees of high temperature. If there is such a material, flying into the sun to mine is not a problem. After all, the temperature at the center of the sun is only more than 20 million degrees Celsius. However, in the not too distant future, there is a magical technology that can confine particles in a certain space while keeping them at a high temperature and preventing them from contacting other materials. Instead of the material container in the traditional sense, it is held by an invisible hand. That is magnetic confinement technology. However, even with magnetic confinement technology, nuclear fusion power generation is still an almost impossible problem for most people. Devices that use magnetic confinement to confine charged particles were born as early as the end of the 20th century. However, the particle principles involved in using magnetic confinement technology to confine uncharged helium-3 and deuterium cannot be explained by today's physics. In short, the negotiations with Australia were successful. Australia agreed to build this submarine cable, but insisted that the construction and maintenance of this submarine cable must be handed over to Australian companies. Jiang Chen readily accepted this proposal. If it really had to be handed over to the offshore construction team of Xinhuan Trade, they would not be able to spare their hands, and could only schedule the construction period until the submarine cable between Anchor Island and the Singapore-Malaysia Special Zone was completed. Australia's annual power generation is almost twice that of Malaysia, close to 400 billion kilowatt-hours. Moreover, due to institutional reasons, the Australian side did not interfere as much as Malaysia did in the negotiations between Starring Trade and its domestic enterprises on the specific amount of imported electricity. Australia's electricity is basically monopolized by two major companies. AGL, which is committed to developing new energy, was quite generous. After hearing Jiang Chen's offer, it signed a contract for 100 billion kWh of electricity without saying a word, and asked for priority cooperation rights in the Australian market. This market in the Southern Hemisphere will bring Starring Trade more than $1 billion Australian dollars in revenue every year. As for India, the negotiations went even more smoothly. As the fifth largest emerging economy in the world in terms of power generation, India's annual electricity fiscal subsidy is a terrifying figure. However, when negotiating with the Indians, Jiang Chen thoroughly felt what it meant to be a drag. Obviously, the price had been agreed upon, but the entire negotiation was inexplicably unable to be negotiated. In the end, Jiang Chen simply handed the follow-up work of the negotiation to the Future Bank's Indian branch, and those professional negotiators acted as agents for the entire negotiation, and then set off to Japan. He had a lot of things to do and didn't have time to waste in one place. In Europe, at the foot of the Alps, in a manor owned by Rothschild, 4 or 5 fruit farmers are working in front of rows of wooden racks with vines hanging on them. The planting techniques they use are inherited from the traditional planting techniques mastered by the Medici family in the 14th century. The Rothschild family believes that only traditional planting techniques can produce the most authentic wine. The red wine flowing from this winery is also a fine wine worth its weight in gold, and is sought after by the entire upper class of Europe. Next to the vineyard, a man in plain clothes is reading a newspaper in his hand, sitting on a wooden chair woven with rattan. If you don't walk in and take a look, no one would know that this man with a Jewish face is the uncrowned king of the underground and above ground forces in the entire Europe. After the tragedy of the Pilsen Church, he, who integrated all the power of the Freemasons, is indeed worthy of the term uncrowned king. Among the senior officials of the entire 33-degree conference, he is the only one with the longest qualifications. As the Lord, he not only holds the power of the Freemasons, but also controls the wealth of the entire Rothschild family. However, at this moment, the young king had a melancholy expression on his face. A Mercedes-Benz stopped at the door of the winery, and Johnson, a black man in a suit, walked into the winery. He was Rothschild's personal bodyguard and his most loyal subordinate. He had been working for Carmen since he was picked by Rothschild from the French Foreign Legion. Even the Munich massacre that shocked the world had his active shadow behind it. Without looking back at Johnson standing behind him, Carmen turned to the next page of the newspaper and asked in a casual tone, "Has it been dealt with?" Johnson answered like a Cold War machine, "It's all dealt with. Just 2 hours ago, all the voices of opposition within the EU were extinguished." Carmen's mouth curled up slightly, and she closed the newspaper in her hand. The butler who had been standing next to her was slightly surprised. This was the first time he saw his young master smile today. Putting the newspaper aside, Carmen stood up and smiled. "What about our enemies? Have they noticed?" Johnson shook his head. "Very good." Looking at the Alps not far away, the smile on Carmen's face became brighter, just like the snow that had just melted on the Alps not far away. "It's almost time for me to set off. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo fanfic novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 964, Return to Tokyo. It has been a whole year since Jiang Chen last came to Tokyo. Today, the streets of Tokyo no longer show any traces of the disaster last year. The Shinagawa district, which was taken over by the US military, has also lifted the blockade, and the shops in the streets and alleys have also changed back to a brand new look and reopened for business. Facts have proved that Jiang Chen's judgment was correct. The black ships have dispersed, the T-virus has disappeared, and the housing prices in Tokyo have returned to the normal level again. Although it has not yet returned to the top 10 in the world, it is not much different. And Yamato House, which was selling off Tokyo real estate like a hot potato at the time, has completely cried in the toilet. No one expected that the crisis would end so quickly. The Shibuya 109 building, which Jiang Chen bought for $60 million, is now making a fortune under the management of the professional real estate manager he hired. The Shinjuku Commercial Street, which was bought as a whole, has now increased in value by more than 10 times. Akihabara, which was bought on a whim, has now been transformed into a street combining holography and informatization by the products of Future People technology. The Japanese government has mixed feelings about the Future Group's transformation in their country. On the one hand, the Future Group's industry almost robbed the Japanese of their money in a predatory manner, and on the other hand, they did benefit from it with pain and joy. Just like the United States, if there is no Future Group, 50% of Americans will take to the streets to scold the federal government. The Japanese government is now facing the same problem. Although they want to learn the technology of the Future Group and then kick it away, they simply can't do it. However, the reaction of the Japanese people is very flat. Most of them don't seem to care who transformed this land. The villa at the foot of Mount Fuji was once a golf course open only to the upper class of Japan. After being bought by Jiang Chen, it was completely transformed into a private villa, and the green lawn covering thousands of acres naturally became Jiang Chen's private garden. In order not to waste, Jiang Chen also learned from European nobles and hired a French gardener to mark out a piece of land from the backyard and turned it into a vineyard. Although the soil at the foot of Mount Fuji has a high sulfur content and the grapes grown there are not sweet, he just put it there as a decoration. Jiang Chen did not expect to make wine with the grapes here. Master, please have some tea. Well, put it there. Okay. Chinatsu, wearing a maid outfit, leaned over and gently placed the brewed black tea on the table. When she left, she accidentally met the eyes of the beauty sitting opposite Jiang Chen, and immediately bowed embarrassedly and turned away. You are quite good at enjoying yourself. After pouting her lips and throwing out these words, Liu Yao picked up the teacup, put it close to her lips, and took a sip, and immediately said hi in surprise. Jiang Chen smiled and said nothing. It seems that during his absence, Chinatsu did not neglect to contact her, and her tea making skills have improved a lot. Why don't you say anything? Don't you miss me? Seeing that Jiang Chen had no reaction, Liu Yao put down the teacup and said pitifully, why not? I've been too busy lately. Jiang Chen laughed and changed the subject. By the way, why did you suddenly come to Japan? To attend the premiere of The Crew in Tokyo. I just told you on the phone the day before yesterday. As if she felt that Jiang Chen didn't value her enough, Liu Yao pouted even higher. But Jiang Chen didn't hate her little woman's attitude. Premiere? Didn't Iron Curtain of Time and Space already show in New York? Jiang Chen asked in surprise. It's not the same movie. I just played a small role in Iron Curtain of Time and Space. Liu Yao stuck out her tongue. Before filming Iron Curtain of Time and Space, I also took on a movie. Your Future Man Technology is the largest investor, so you don't care about your company's business? Jiang Chen thought about it. This was probably before Ning Huajian was promoted to CEO of the head office. Although Jiang Chen has never made public the relationship between him and Liu Yao, there have always been rumors of similar scandals on the internet. The investment for a domestic film is at most 200 to 300 million RMB, which is only a drop in the bucket compared to the profits of Future Group's business in China. As long as this kind of small investment complies with the procedures, there is naturally no need for the people below to report it to him. In his impression, Liu Yao had told him about this before, but so many things have happened recently that he really can't remember it. Just when Jiang Chen was awkwardly thinking about how to search for her name when she wasn't paying attention to see which movie it was, Liu Yao saw through his embarrassment at a glance and said the name of the movie herself. It's The Three-Body Problem, a domestic science fiction blockbuster. The Three-Body Problem? Jiang Chen was stunned, with a subtle surprise on his face. His first reaction was not to ask Liu Yao, "What role are you playing?" But, "It's finally made? It's finally made?" Speaking of the movie The Three-Body Problem, it's really a pity. From the initial grand publicity, to CEO Kong's ambition to make a Chinese science fiction blockbuster, to Kang Er-gao's low-key announcement of his resignation 2 months before the release, the special effects team and the director were completely removed. The seemingly bright future of Chinese science fiction movies has been cast a shadow. Although Yaozu Pictures has never given up the adaptation rights of The Three-Body Problem, the budget burned in the early stage finally exchanged for an ending where all the materials were abandoned, which made the investors who were originally optimistic about this project abandon it. Even the parent company of Yaozu Pictures has maintained a cautious attitude towards it. Feelings are not worth mentioning in front of capital. A risky project will make investors cautious, even if Zhang Yimou is the director. Because it can't find a suitable investor, this masterpiece that won the Hugo Award has fallen into the dilemma of infinite delays. Fortunately, the new crew that took over the adaptation of The Three-Body Problem later found the big boss Futureman Technology, or in other words, found the woman of a big boss. Although many netizens are dissatisfied with the fact that a big-breasted actress was invited to play the leading female role and think that this is disrespectful to the original work, the crew eager to find investors can't care so much. The adaptation rights are limited and they can't wait forever. What's more, Liu Yao now has a certain box office appeal. As for whether the leading female role in the original work has big breasts, who else would care except the fans of the original work? Besides, in this kind of sci-fi group portrait work, is the image of the heroine really important? In this way, the domestic sci-fi blockbuster, which had a bumpy road, was finally successfully released in early 2019. As the investor, Futureman Technology also soft implanted some shots of the movie according to the contract. For example, the VR helmet that appeared in the play directly used the Phantom helmet. The trademark of Futureman Technology has also been printed on many high-tech products. In any case, after this bumpy journey, the crew responsible for filming finally brought the movie to the big screen in 2019, shattering the rumor that it would be postponed to 2020. Chapter 965. Do you believe, now that I miss you? It has been filmed a long time ago. Liu Yao rolled her eyes at Jiang Chen charmingly, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. 3 days ago, I was in Wanghai City to attend the premiere of Huaguo. According to the reaction of the theater chain, the box office performance on the first day of release was quite good, and it can be ranked first among the movies released at the same time. Now all major theater chains have begun to increase the screening rate. If nothing unexpected happens, the box office will exceed 1 billion. 1 billion? Jiang Chen smacked his lips. This sentiment is too valuable. Hey, what? I worked hard when filming, okay? Liu Yao said unhappily. Praise me more too. Also, you didn't accompany me to the movies last time and this time. At this point, Liu Yao's face suddenly turned red, and her voice became softer and softer. She suddenly remembered that every time Jiang Chen accompanied her to the cinema, he would accompany her to watch an advanced screening at home, and when watching the movie, it seemed that he was in a special posture. How about watching it together later? Jiang Chen smiled maliciously. Hate it. Liu Yao punched Jiang Chen in the chest hard, but did not refuse. The Tokyo premiere was held, and the crew would of course bring the film source with them. Jiang Chen called Ning Huajian, who had been promoted to CEO of Futureman Technology Corporation, and the digital version of the film source was soon delivered to him. Not favored by investors, the director was not a big name, so naturally he had no confidence to refuse the request from the largest investor. Instructing Kaiangsha to go back to university for classes first, Jiang Chen took Liu Yao back to the villa. A mansion of this level naturally cannot be without a home theater. Pulling out the data cable to connect the watch to the home theater, Jiang Chen imported the digital version of the film source into the device, and Liu Yao had already brought 2 bottles of red wine from the refrigerator. The 2 bottles of red wine were opened, and Jiang Chen sat next to Liu Yao. The logos of Yaozu Pictures and Future Man Technology flashed on the big screen. The film officially began. To be honest, the development of domestic science fiction films is difficult, and it is not entirely the director's fault. Special effects are the biggest problem. It may be okay to use 50-cent special effects to shoot fantasy works, but when shooting fantasy works with realistic style such as science fiction, it depends on the skills to avoid being awkward. Fortunately, Future Man Technology, as the investor, helped the crew solve this problem. All special effects were outsourced to Virtual Animation, a subsidiary of Future Man Technology. In order to ensure that the investment of nearly 200 million yuan would not go to waste, Virtual Animation also sent 2 specialists to Wanghei City, a masterpiece above the standard line. After watching the movie, Jiang Chen gave such an evaluation of the film. After drinking the last drop of red wine in the glass, Jiang Chen let out a long breath, picked up the remote control to turn off the movie, picked up the soft Liu Yao, and walked towards the bedroom. After watching the movie for so long, he was a little tired with his physical fitness, and she must be exhausted at this moment. Well, it was really just watching a movie, and nothing was done like last time, so don't think too much. The soft jade was in his arms, and there was a faint gasp in his ears, mixed with a hint of sweet aftertaste. Dead man. A soft mosquito-like complaint came from her ear, and then her earlobe was bitten gently by a pair of silver teeth. It didn't hurt, but it was very tempting. Jiang Chen smiled wickedly, stretched out his hand and patted the hip. Now, do you believe that I miss you? I believe it. Liu Yao pouted, as if she had given up, but the sweet smile on her lips could not be hidden. Jiang Chen smiled and said nothing. He turned her over and covered her with a quilt. Have a good sleep. After kissing Liu Yao's forehead, Jiang Chen turned and left the bedroom. Kaiangsha went to class, and there was no one else in the villa, so he personally cleaned up the things in the living room. He picked up household garbage such as empty wine bottles, and put them in the garbage bag in the kitchen. Just after he finished cleaning up, Liu Yao screamed from the bedroom. After a while, he saw her with messy hair running out in a hurry. Oh no. I have to attend the premiere tonight. How could I forget about this? Woohoo, my agent just called me to urge me. Rushing into the bathroom and throwing herself in front of the mirror, Liu Yao millimeters carefully checked her face and body for any strange marks. There will be many reporters at the scene, and it would be embarrassing if she was found with kiss marks or something like that. When she ran out of the bedroom, she only had time to put on a t-shirt. Looking at the 2 shining jade legs and the looming mysterious area from behind, Jiang Chen felt that the emotions he had just vented were gradually swelling up again. Agent? Male or female? Walking behind Liu Yao, Jiang Chen stretched out his arms to hug her slender waist and said with a smile, "Bad guy, of course it's a woman, my best friend in college, my junior who graduated 3 years later than me." Feeling that something terrifying was pressing against her, Liu Yao blushed and looked at him with some fear. Well, she has come to pick me up. Can we wait until the premiere is over tonight? Although it was a bit regretful, Jiang Chen knew the limit and did not embarrass Liu Yao. He bullied her for a while and then returned to the living room. There was another negotiation to prepare in the afternoon, and he didn't want to have too much fun. After Liu Yao finished dressing up, the pure and dignified Liu Yao appeared in front of him again in a light blue fashionable long dress. At about the same time, a black car stopped outside Jiang Chen's villa and was stopped by 2 Xinghuan security guards in suits. Just when Chen Yuqing was anxious and didn't know what to do, the door of the villa opened and a man and a woman walked out of the main building of the villa. The woman was naturally Liu Yao, and the one she was holding her arm with was naturally Jiang Chen. "Ao, you finally came out." Chen Yuqing grabbed Liu Yao's hand. "I can't see anyone from the crew. It's so bad. Why didn't you tell me when you left?" The girl with the bob haircut looked very young. Although she was dressed very fashionably, her behavior and words showed that she had just left the academy. "Sorry, I made you worry." Liu Yao scratched her cheek embarrassedly. How could she have the nerve to talk about secretly meeting her lover? In a second, Chen Yuqing turned her gaze to Jiang Chen, and her eyes widened in an instant. You are Jiang Chen? Absolutely. Jiang Chen nodded with a smile. Chen Yuqing nodded blankly, lowered her head, and whispered, I thought it was a Yao who was joking with me that time, but it turns out that the rumors in the crew are true. Jiang Chen smiled. Can I ask you to keep a Yao a secret? Chen Yuqing nodded vigorously and smiled. Of course. I'm her agent. I still have some professional ethics. After that, Chen Yuqing looked at Liu Yao with some complaints. You have to be careful too. The terrain here is so open. If the reporters dare not follow me. Jiang Chen said half jokingly, didn't you notice that the two cars that followed you have turned around and left? At his level, it is too easy to deal with an ordinary person. No one would joke with their own lives, so naturally there would be no blind reporters who would point the camera at him in private. Chen Yuqing looked at the street behind her in surprise, but found nothing. It was obvious that the new agent did not realize that he was being followed. After leaving the crew, Jiang Chen could not help but worry about Liu Yao. Is such a reckless agent good or bad for her acting career? Holding Jiang Chen's arm, Liu Yao stood on tiptoe and kissed him on the cheek, saying coquettishly, can you accompany me to the premiere tonight? What time is it? Jiang Chen asked. 8 o'clock in the evening. In front of the Piccadilly Cinema in Shinjuku. Liu Yao said excitedly. 8 o'clock in the evening? Jiang Chen looked at the watch. It was only about 10 o'clock in the morning. It should be no problem. I should be done by then. Yeah. I love you the most. Liu Yao hugged Jiang Chen happily, kissed him hard on the face, and said with a smile, be sure to come. I will dress up beautifully. Jiang Chen smiled and patted her on the butt, letting go of Liu Yao who was protesting and trying to fight back. After the casual play, they stood still on the street. Liu Yao waved goodbye to Jiang Chen, then reluctantly turned around and got into the car with Chen Yuqing. Looking at the direction the car was leaving, Jiang Chen habitually raised his watch, checked the time, and said to himself, it's already this late, it's time to leave. It was agreed that there would be another explosion the day after tomorrow, if nothing unexpected happened. Brothers who have money, don't hide it, hand it over quickly. Chapter 966 Sumitomo Group. 1 cent electricity price? Mr. Jiang, are you sure you are not kidding? Yes, Jiang Chen patiently repeated what he had said countless times. We only need a cable from Angier Island in New Japan to Tokyo to solve the electricity demand of the entire Japan. The dwarf sitting opposite him smiled and shook Jiang Chen's hand enthusiastically. Hey, we can talk about this. After the biochemical crisis, the former Japanese Prime Minister Comrade Wanren was forced to step down. Although the new Japanese politicians are not as right-wing as the previous ones, the conservative color of its domestic political arena is still quite strong. The specific manifestation is the distrust of foreign companies. Xinhua Trade can guarantee the supply of electricity within the contract period. What if the contract expires, and Xinhua Trade refuses to renew the contract, or asks for a higher price? Faced with an electricity price of 1 cent, Japan's domestic power stations are not competitive at all. There is a gap that cannot be filled by financial subsidies. By that time, most of Japan's power plants will probably be closed down. Even if they don't want to accept the price increase from starring trade, they will have to accept it. Tempting conditions? Of course they are. Since the Fukushima nuclear power plant incident, the whole of Japan has been shrouded in a mode called nuclear panic. Want to start building nuclear power plants again? It's almost impossible. But if we don't rely on nuclear power, we can't solve the social contradictions brought about by the growing demand for electricity by relying on new energy sources with low power. Even if Jiang Chen repeatedly assured that such a thing would not happen, it might not be so easy to dispel the concerns of Japanese politicians with just a few words. I'm sorry that I can't give you a clear answer today. I still have to exchange opinions with my cabinet before I can make a responsible answer. The dwarf sitting opposite Jiang Chen stood up and bowed. After shaking hands with Jiang Chen, he sent him out the door. No matter what sinister things they think in their hearts, they will not write them on their faces. This is also the most tiring part of negotiating with the Japanese, that Jiang Chen feels. This was completely different from India, where the Indians happily invited him into the house and began negotiations with a look of ease, but they were hesitant when it came to signing. Jiang Chen was even thinking about whether he should find an American to negotiate on his behalf. As long as the commission was appropriate, Boston First National Bank or Morgan Stanley would be happy to negotiate on his behalf. And with his father as a guarantor, Japanese politicians would be less wary. After leaving the Japanese Prime Minister's residence and getting into the accompanying car, Jiang Chen glanced at the time on his watch. It was only a little after 3 o'clock, and there was still some time before the 8 o'clock meeting he had agreed to meet with Liu Yao. Just as he was thinking about what to do during this time, a phone call suddenly rang on his watch. "Hello. It's me, boss. I've done what you asked me to do." David Smith's voice rang in his ears. Jiang Chen had previously entrusted the negotiations between Starring Trade and the Indian power company to Future Bank, and now it seemed that the results had been negotiated. "Is it the original contract?" "Yes, the Indian State Electricity Corporation has made concessions on the investment share of the submarine cable and agreed to bear 70% of the construction costs." Jiang Chen's mouth curled up a smile. "Well done. The construction cost of the submarine cable has always been one of the issues that the two sides have been arguing about. Jiang Chen has already saved them a lot of electricity bills, so there is no reason to help them deliver food to their mouths. The construction cost of nearly $1 billion is not a small amount. At the beginning, the Indian State Electricity Corporation insisted that both parties bear 50% each. Later, it finally gave in to 60%, but it was still 10 points short of the expectations of Starring Trade. As long as you find the right way to get along with the Indians, it's actually very easy." Smith smiled and accepted Jiang Chen's praise. Jiang Chen smiled and exchanged a few words with Smith. At this moment, Smith suddenly seemed to remember something and spoke. "By the way, there is one more thing." "What is it?" Jiang Chen asked. "The exchange rate trend of the euro in the international foreign exchange market has been very strange recently. According to the analysis of the financial team of Future Bank, there may be traces of human intervention behind this. Although we have interrupted most of our business in Europe, we still hold a lot of euros and real estate in Europe." At this point, Mr. Smith stopped talking and waited for his boss's decision. Jiang Chen's intuition told him that the Freemasonry was most likely involved, but there was no way to judge more useful information based on the abnormal exchange rate trend alone. Sitting in the car, Jiang Chen pondered for a moment and asked in a deep voice, "What is your suggestion?" "Sell some assets in Europe and exchange some euros in the bank for US dollars or gold. The euro has great risks. When we don't see favorable expectations for us, the best way is to reduce holdings appropriately. Just do as you say." "Yes, boss." After hanging up the phone, Jiang Chen wiped his finger and folded the holographic screen. The bodyguard sitting in the front passenger seat turned slightly and respectfully asked Jiang Chen for instructions. "Boss, where are we going now?" With his arm on the window, Jiang Chen tapped the door with his index finger to keep the rhythm while watching the young girls passing by. After thinking for a moment, he made up his mind. "Where is the best place to talk business near Shinjuku? Besides the hotel?" The bodyguard immediately replied, "There is a high-end business bar in Shinjuku, which is more suitable. Let's go there." "Yes." The car slowly started on the road. Jiang Chen clicked on the holographic screen of his watch and scrolled through the list of business cards. A row of light blue information lists appeared in front of him. In order to facilitate memory, every time he received a business card, Jiang Chen would scan the information on the business card into the watch for storage, and the artificial intelligence would classify it according to a certain algorithm. In this way, when he needs it, he can easily find the required phone number. President of Chubu Electric Power Company, second son of the Sumitomo Group, Kenichi Sumitomo. After selecting this number, Jiang Chen dialed the phone. Although he could no longer remember when he had met this Japanese man, it did not prevent the two sides from talking about business. Sitting there and waiting for the Japanese government's response unilaterally is not Jiang Chen's style. Although the influence of Japanese financial groups on Japanese politics is not as obvious as the influence of Wall Street on the White House in the United States, it is still a political force that cannot be ignored. Although Xinhua and trade and the Japanese government have not yet reached an agreement on the issue of power grid connection, this does not prevent him from first talking to the power company or the Sumitomo Financial Group. With billions of dollars in profits involved, Jiang Chen does not believe that the Sumitomo Financial Group will not be tempted. And since they are tempted, they will surely contribute to the Japanese Congress. Chapter 967 Premiere. The Chubu Electric Power Company is headquartered in Nagoya, a city in the central region of Japan. It provides electricity to about 16.6 million people in 5 prefectures in the central region. It is the third largest power company in Japan, and the controlling shareholder is the Sumitomo Group. In fact, in addition to the Chubu Electric Power Company, Jiang Chen has a better choice, that is Tokyo Electric Power. However, due to the deep quagmire of the Fukushima nuclear accident, Tokyo Electric Power Company has not yet resolved the compensation and aftermath issues. In addition, the company's financial situation is not ideal and there is a risk of bankruptcy. Combining these reasons, Jiang Chen finally chose Chubu Electric Power as a partner. A black car stopped at the door of a high-end business bar in Shinjuku district. Although most bars are closed at this time, this bar is a bit special. It is open as usual even at 8 o'clock in the morning, but it does not provide bartending services. Closing the car door casually, Jiang Chen walked into the bar. 2 strong bodyguards in suits and sunglasses escorted him on both sides. He was a little handsome, and with his expensive suit and cool sunglasses, he attracted countless eyes. Before he even stepped into the door of the bar, the receptionist hurried forward and asked weakly, "Hello, sir. May I ask how is your membership card?" Jiang Chen frowned slightly. He could not understand Japanese. Seeing this, the bodyguard standing beside him immediately leaned over and whispered in his ear. Seeing that Jiang Chen did not respond, the receptionist was stunned and a little at a loss. At this moment, a standard Mandarin voice floated over from the bar. "Mr. Jiang is my honored guest. How dare you stop him at the door?" This sentence was obviously said to Jiang Chen, because the receptionist was obviously confused. When they walked to a place with brighter light, a young man walked out of the bar. He was also dressed in a suit and leather shoes. His handsome appearance could be called handsome, but he was almost half a head shorter than Jiang Chen. He first scolded the receptionist in a low voice, and then changed his face to a smile, and greeted Jiang Chen. "I hope Mr. Jiang will forgive me for the poor hospitality." Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled. "It's okay. Speaking of which, Mr. Sumitomo actually arrived first. To be honest, this business bar is one of our family's businesses. When Mr. Jiang called, we were negotiating business with Tokyo Electric Power Company." Sumitomo Kenichi made a gesture to the bar. "Please come in." As he followed him into the bar, Jiang Chen asked with a smile, "Oh, may I ask, what is the business?" "About the merger of the power grid management rights in Ome City, Tokyo." When he said this, Sumitomo Kenichi's expression was quite confident, so much so that Jiang Chen, who was walking beside him, unexpectedly looked at this guy twice more. Unnoticeably showing his strength, it seems that the Sumitomo Group is well informed and already knows what he is going to discuss with them. Judging from the layout of the bar, the difference between this so-called high-end business bar and other bars is probably that there is no dazzling light and violent music. The lighting in the lobby was very soft, and the decoration was quite elegant, with a Western design and a touch of Japanese style. Most of the people drinking in the booths were wearing formal clothes. A beautiful waiter took the 2 to the VIP room deep in the bar and respectfully opened the door for them. But before entering, Sumitomo Kenichi stopped, turned around and looked at Jiang Chen and smiled. "Do you need to take a bath first?" Jiang Chen was stunned for a moment, then reacted, smiled and shook his head. "No, I have a date tonight. Taking a bath in a place like this must be the only possibility. If there is time." Jiang Chen doesn't mind experiencing the characteristic culture of Japan and trying out the differences between the big swords abroad and those in China. But he has to attend the premiere of Liu Yao millimeters in a while. If he agrees, he may not be able to go back until late at night. Sumitomo Kenichi winked at Jiang Chen with a look that all men understand, but he obviously misunderstood. That's a pity. Since Mr. Jiang has other plans tonight, I can only entertain you next time. Turning around, Sumitomo Kenichi winked at the waitress, indicating that she could go down first, and then smiled at Jiang Chen and made a gesture to the private room. Please come in. Jiang Chen gestured to the bodyguards, indicating that they should wait at the door, and then walked into the private room. Shinjuku Piccadilly Cinema, as the first science fiction masterpiece to go abroad, the premiere of The Three-Body Problem 1 was held quite grandly. Backed by the wealthy Future Man technology, the crew had a sufficient budget and directly booked the entrance of Piccadilly Cinema and the most upscale number 1 screening room. The premiere started at 8 o'clock, but at just 6 o'clock, reporters from major media, as well as special guests, film critics and fans who got tickets for the premiere through various channels, had already gathered at the door. Before the red carpet process began, the flashlights set the rhythm all around. For this sci-fi movie from China, Japanese sci-fi fans are more surprised than they are looking forward to it. As early as after the release of The Three-Body Problem 1 in China, trailers and low-pixel sneak peeks have been circulated to other countries through various channels. The special effects technology of Chinese movies is only worth 50 cents, and many people have already accepted this fact. And it is precisely because of this that Japanese fans are so surprised. Because from what they saw in the trailer, they could not imagine that it was produced by a Chinese producer, but more like the work of a Hollywood studio across the Pacific. While interviewing the crew members, reporters from major media outlets did not ignore the audience. I hope it's not a false alarm. This is my first time to join in the fun at a movie premiere. China also has science fiction movies? Ha, unbelievable. I must expose their lies to their faces. I've read the novel. It seems pretty good, but I doubt. Does the producer I've never heard of have the ability to bring this movie to the screen? With all due respect, even Hollywood producers would find it difficult to perfectly restore some of the details in the book. The trailer is good. I hope the movie is the same. Xiao Feng is so handsome. That Liu Yao is so beautiful. Are there any posters of her for sale? Are there any peripherals for sale at the premiere? Or can I only buy them on Amazon? But it's too late. I really want her autograph. On the other side, Liu Yao, who had already changed into an evening gown, stood in front of the media camera with a smile on her face, accepting interviews from reporters. Unlike the little girl she was with Jiang Chen, she was now dignified and elegant, standing there like a goddess. Chen Yuqing had already planned what questions to answer and how to answer them. Although the questions were thrown at her like a string of cannonballs, she still answered them all calmly. However, as time gradually approached 8 o'clock, the look between her eyebrows gradually took on a hint of anxiety, and her beautiful eyes drifted towards the main entrance of the theater from time to time. Finally getting rid of the entanglement of the media, Liu Yao returned to the dressing room with a tired body. Next, she had to walk the red carpet, and before that she had to touch up her makeup. The beautiful makeup artist of the crew had been waiting for a long time. Almost as soon as she sat down, she quickly grabbed the brush and foundation and danced on her fingertips like flying. Sitting there motionless, letting the makeup artist finish fiddling with her face and hair, facing the self in the mirror, Liu Yao curved the corners of her mouth and squeezed out a beautiful smile. Are you ready, my queen? Chen Yuqing, who was standing next to her, joked. Liu Yao smiled and hit her bestie. Be careful, Her Majesty the Queen will hit you on the butt. After playing with her bestie for a while, Liu Yao went to the makeup mirror and carefully checked if there was anything she missed. Behind her, Chen Yuqing stood still, coughed lightly, and reminded her, "You'll be walking on the red carpet soon." Yes. With a faint smile, Liu Yao's face was full of confidence. This was her first time playing the leading female role, and it was also her first time walking on the red carpet of an overseas premiere as the leading actress. However, at this moment, there was a faint sound of commotion outside the door. Chapter 968. Please go out. The chaotic footsteps gradually approached. Liu Yao and Chen Yuqing looked at each other and saw confusion in each other's eyes. At this time, the door of the dressing room was suddenly pushed open, and a man in a white suit and exaggerated dress walked into the dressing room with a rose in his hand. His eyes swept across the dressing room and stopped on Liu Yao. The man smiled slightly and walked in front of her with a meteor. Who are you? Liu Yao frowned slightly. Your admirer. From the first time I saw you, I was deeply impressed by your beauty and couldn't help myself. The man smiled in what he thought was a gentleman's smile, showing a mouthful of white teeth, and handed the flowers to Liu Yao. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Morita Yosuke, the manager of Morita Real Estate. In 2016, I went to China to discuss business. At that time, I watched the movie you starred in and fell deeply in love with you. After the premiere, can I have the honor to buy you a drink? 2016. Liu Yao was slightly stunned. Was there a schedule for her movie at that time? No matter what, barging into the dressing room without knocking, this arrogant man gave her a very bad first impression. Chen Yuking, who was standing next to Liu Yao, looked at the Japanese in front of her speechlessly and shook her head in her heart. Morita Real Estate? It might be a behemoth in the eyes of others, but what is it in front of the man behind her? Chen Yuking asked herself if her man was as good as that man. I'm afraid that if she looks at other men again, she will probably look down on them. Mr. Morita, it is very impolite to break into a lady's dressing room without permission. Hasn't anyone taught you that? Standing half a step in front of Liu Yao, Chen Yuking pushed the square-framed glasses on her nose and said coldly. Morita frowned slightly, glanced at Chen Yuking, and then resumed his gentlemanly smile, looking past her and continuing to look at Liu Yao. I will apologize for my rudeness. After getting the goddess's reply, I will naturally leave. When saying this, Morita was polite, but there was an undetectable flash of disdain between his eyebrows. She is just a Chinese female star, but this young master is the heir of a real estate company with a market value of 1 trillion yen. He can't count the stars he has slept with one hand. He personally took action on a female star who just passed the second line and couldn't touch the first line. He didn't believe that she would not bow down under his belt. However, Liu Yao's answer was colder than her agent Chen Yuking, and there were only 4 concise words. Please go out. Morita Yosuke's confident and sunny smile froze on his face, and it turned blue and white. At this time, the security guards of the theater also rushed to the dressing room with the crew members. The people around him heard the cold rejection clearly. Seeing that Morita Yosuke did not move, Liu Yao repeated it in a cold voice in front of everyone. Please leave. After understanding the situation in an instant, Director Wu Fan, who was standing next to the security guard, immediately stepped forward to Morita Yosuke and warned him with a gloomy face. Please leave here immediately, otherwise we will contact the police. Morita Yosuke's facial muscles trembled constantly because he was completely embarrassed. Just when Chen Yuking was worried that he would suddenly jump up and block Liu Yao, he suddenly laughed. A very strange laugh. Suddenly grinning, Morita Yosuke let go of his hand and threw the bouquet of roses on the ground. Okay. After saying okay 3 times in a row, he turned and walked to the door. Turning back, his eyes swept across the faces of the director and other crew members, and finally stopped at Liu Yao's face, and grinned with a somewhat sinister expression. You are just an actor. You are too ungrateful. I hope you don't regret it. Here, no one has ever dared to refuse me. After saying this, he turned around, pushed away the crowd, and walked away. The crew was talking about it. Director Wu reprimanded the security guard for letting someone who was not a member of the crew sneak into the dressing room. If this was a paparazzi or even a kidnapper, it would be a big problem. Looking at the back of the inexplicable man, Liu Yao frowned slightly, feeling a little uneasy. She didn't take his harsh words to heart, but was worried that it would bring trouble to the crew. Are you okay, Yao? Chen Yuking stepped forward and held Liu Yao's arm. She looked at her best friend with some worry and glared at the man's back fiercely. Don't take the words of that psychopath to heart. At worst, we can go find Jiang Chen. He will definitely have a way. But Chen Yuking didn't say this. After all, the relationship between the two had not been discussed yet. I'm fine. Liu Yao shook her head and patted Chen Yuking's hand comfortingly. There's no need to trouble him with this matter. Director Wu Fan glanced at the onlookers and said with the dignity he had when filming. What are you all standing there for? We are going to walk the red carpet soon. Why don't you hurry up and do what you need to do? Seeing Director Wu say this, the crew members also dispersed. Is it a problem on your side? If it doesn't work, we can postpone the red carpet walk by 10 minutes and use other activities to make up for it. No, I'm fine. Liu Yao shook her head. Director Wu nodded, gestured to the makeup artist, and then left the dressing room. After the door closed, Liu Yao slowly breathed a sigh of relief and gradually calmed down. At this time, she glanced at the roses scattered on the ground, and then casually said to Chen Yuqing, "Let someone come and clean up here. It's annoying to see it." "Okay, I'll go now." Chen Yuqing nodded and walked out the door. The negotiation with the Sumitomo Group was very successful, so successful that it even surprised Jiang Chen. He barely had to waste any time talking. As soon as he threw the proposal on the negotiation table, the other party nodded without hesitation and readily expressed his willingness to work in Congress, to urge the cabinet government to pass the grid interconnection plan as soon as possible, hype the nuclear power threat theory, exaggerate the energy crisis. For these big financial groups, there is too much room for maneuver. Long before the negotiations began, Sumitomo Kenichi had guessed what Jiang Chen was going to talk about with him. Rather, Sumitomo Group had guessed that Jiang Chen might be negotiating about power exports as early as when Jiang Chen got off the plane at Tokyo International Airport. There are 9 power companies in Japan, and the entire power market can be said to be in a state of division among the warlords. It is crucial for Starring Trading to start cooperating with which company first, which means which region the cable signed from Singapore to Japan will be moved into the Japanese power grid from, which means which company is most likely to gain an advantage in cost, snatch the business of other power companies, and expand its own business scope. Jiang Chen doesn't care about that. The Japanese can fight among themselves. He is optimistic about this energy market worth tens of billions of dollars and this rope that will tie up the entire Japan in the future. Is it an exaggeration? Not at all. Starring Trading's cost has an unparalleled bidding advantage in the power market. The export price of 1 cent per kilowatt hour brings a gap that cannot be filled by fiscal subsidies. As time goes by, there will be fewer and fewer power stations in Japan, and then the dependence on nuclear power, natural gas, and oil will also decrease. This seems to benefit the country and the people, but in fact it has put another shackle on Japan that cannot be shaken off. That is, the submarine power transmission cable controlled by Starring Trade. The contract has been basically negotiated, and it can be signed immediately, as long as the policy allows. Even Sumitomo Kenichi, who has some scheming in his heart, couldn't help but show his joy after negotiating a multi-billion-dollar deal for his family. After sending Jiang Chen to the door of the business bar and watching the car go away, he punched hard and couldn't hold back the ecstasy in his heart and laughed 3 times at the door of the hotel. Passers-by looked sideways and cast caring eyes on this crazy person. The streets with bright lights and wine gradually faded away. Jiang Chen withdrew his eyes from the car window, reached out and clicked on the holographic screen of his watch. It is now 7:30, and there is still half an hour before the premiere. Let's go directly to Piccadilly Cinema. Jiang Chen turned off the holographic screen and instructed the driver sitting in the driver's seat. Yes, boss. Piccadilly Cinema is also in Shinjuku district, not far from the high-end business bar he left earlier. Fortunately, there was no traffic jam, and it took about 15 minutes to reach the destination. When Jiang Chen got off the car in the parking lot in front of the cinema, the premiere had almost begun. After adjusting the collar of his suit at the door, Jiang Chen walked towards the main entrance of the cinema. Just as he passed the main entrance, he saw a man in a white suit, followed by 2 security guards, walking out of the cinema with a gloomy face. This posture, as if he had committed something in there, and was escorted out. After meeting Jiang Chen, the man said something in bird language, and then walked away angrily. Hearing what the man said, the bodyguard following Jiang Chen was about to turn around and catch up with him, but was stopped by Jiang Chen. What did he say? Jiang Chen turned his head slightly and asked his bodyguard. The bodyguard hesitated, but still restored the real context. Go away. Frowning slightly, Jiang Chen looked back at the man, who had already walked away. Don't pay attention to this kind of person. He left this sentence lightly and continued to move forward, being watched by the security guards all the way to the parking lot. Morita Yosuke got into his Lexus LFA. After starting the car, he glanced at the Piccadilly Cinema with a gloomy look. The Piccadilly Cinema has a strong backstage, so of course he didn't dare to do anything. But these crews from China don't have any foundation in Japan. He is in real estate, so naturally he has to deal with people from the underworld. It is too easy to deal with these foreigners, especially the Chinese. He took out his phone and dialed a number. "Major, it's me, Morita. There is something I want to ask you for a favor. The price is negotiable." Chapter 969. Red carpet inside and outside. After asking the staff for directions, Jiang Chen walked towards the crew, but when he reached the intersection leading to the dressing room, 2 security guards stopped him. "Sorry, sir, the front is not open to tourists." After the bodyguard translated the words of the 2 security guards to Jiang Chen frowned slightly and replied in English, "I'm not a tourist. Someone invited me, so are you?" The 2 security guards standing there like iron towers replied in a tone that could not be refused, "Is the security level so high for a normal premiere?" Just as Jiang Chen was thinking about this and was about to call Liu Yao, he saw an acquaintance coming out. Seeing Jiang Chen, Chen Yuking's eyes lit up and she immediately greeted him and walked over this way. "You are finally here. Yao has been waiting for you for a long time." Chen Yuking winked at Jiang Chen, turned around and said a few words to the 2 security guards in English, then pulled Jiang Chen up with a smile and walked into the corridor. "Follow me." Leaving the 2 bodyguards outside, Jiang Chen followed Chen Yuking to Liu Yao's dressing room. "Don't be surprised," Chen Yuking said to Jiang Chen jokingly and stretched out her hand to push open the door of the dressing room. The door of the dressing room opened. Looking at Liu Yao standing in front of the makeup mirror, Jiang Chen had the illusion that he didn't know her for a moment. Her eyebrows were as long as a painting. Her eyes were as bright as stars, her black hair fell like a waterfall, and her elegant evening dress outlined her beautiful figure, enchanting yet dignified. As expected, clothes make the man, and this was the first time that Jiang Chen had the illusion that she looked better in clothes than without clothes. Seeing Jiang Chen, her beautiful eyes instantly bloomed with joy. Liu Yao stepped forward and grabbed Jiang Chen's arm. She resisted the urge to pounce on him and pouted. "You're finally here. I thought you forgot me again." "What do you mean by again? I never forgot, okay?" Jiang Chen laughed. As he spoke, he reached out and gently touched her hair, saying sincerely, "You look so beautiful today." Liu Yao laughed happily and accepted his compliment happily without saying anything. "Don't mess up your makeup. You'll be walking on the red carpet in 5 minutes, and there's no time to touch up your makeup." Behind the 2 of them, Chen Yuking joked. Liu Yao blushed and rolled her eyes at her bestie. "I didn't do anything. How could I mess up my makeup?" "That's good." She covered her mouth and chuckled as she left this sentence. Chen Yuking left the dressing room and carefully closed the door for the 2 of them. She stood guard at the door to prevent anyone from suddenly coming in to disturb them. Although the cinema has strengthened security, there is no guarantee that paparazzi will not sneak in again. It was okay to be seen by the crew, but if caught by those troublesome entertainment reporters, it would be big news. The 3-body problem one had just been released overseas. At this time, if the leading actress had a scandal with the boss of the financing company, it would be hard to guarantee that it would not affect the box office. Without staying in the dressing room for too long, Jiang Chen walked out before Liu Yao 2 minutes later. After hearing that Jiang Chen had come to the crew in person, director Wu Fan rushed over with joy, shook hands with Jiang Chen, and exchanged a few words, and reissued him the movie ticket and special guest certificate. With this certificate, he can freely enter and exit the crew's work area without worrying about being blocked outside by the security guards as a tourist. Led by the assistant director Zhao Zhang, Jiang Chen entered the VIP channel and came to the red carpet. Walking the red carpet has always been the finale of the premiere. Most of the reporters' cameras and cannons gathered here, and there were also many enthusiastic fans at the scene. Generally speaking, at a premiere, there will always be a few guests who cannot attend due to personal reasons. At this time, in order to ensure that the venue is full, the organizer will generally randomly distribute temporary tickets to fans on the scene for admission. However, such opportunities are rare. Unless the movie is too bad or the organizer messes up, there will be at most 3 or 4 temporary tickets for a premiere. This is also the reason for the enthusiasm of fans. The closer you are to the red carpet, the higher the chance of getting a temporary ticket. Of course, the premise is that you can't get too close. If you are thrown out by the security guard, you will lose everything. On the red carpet, the actors are being photographed and filmed by the media. Actors who are not famous have not had the opportunity to walk the red carpet for several years, and at this moment they can't wait to stick to the carpet. Liu Yao shook her long hair, stepped forward confidently in high heels, and walked quickly across the red carpet like a goddess. She ignored the reporters' requests to take pictures and gave all the cameras a confident and chic silhouette. After walking through the red carpet and coming to the interview area, they took photos with the crew members in front of the camera and accepted interviews from the media in 2s and 3s. She played the role of Master Yi in the film. The plot and subplots of the 3-body problem 1 can be said to run through her life, and the media also poured a lot of enthusiasm on her, which made other actors envious. Without a bodyguard, Jiang Chen sat alone in the corner of the VIP lounge, waiting for Liu Yao. At this time, a woman in high heels walked to his side with a thump and said with a smile, "Excuse me, is there anyone next to you?" A faint scent of perfume floated with the pleasant voice, and Jiang Chen raised his head slightly and said casually, "No one, what's the matter?" The woman smiled slightly, sat next to him, and took out a lipstick and a photo of herself from her bag. "Nothing, I just want to ask my idol for an autograph." "Idol? In 4 years, from nothing to the richest man in the world, your life experience can be written into a book." The woman stared at Jiang Chen with her big, shining eyes. "Can you give me a chance to get to know you?" Jiang Chen smiled and joked, "Of course, when I'm old and have nothing to do, I might publish a biography." The woman was amused by Jiang Chen's words and laughed with her hands covering her mouth. Jiang Chen took the photo and pen from her hand, scribbled his name on it, and gave it back to her, smiling and joking. "The autograph you asked for. This is a return gift." The woman took out another photo from her bag and scribbled her name on it with lipstick. However, she did not give it to Jiang Chen immediately. Instead, she smiled mysteriously, put the back of the photo close to her lips and kissed it, leaving a tempting lip print. "Bye." After handing the photo to Jiang Chen, the woman stood up, waved her hand and hurried away. Jiang Chen picked up the photo and recognized her name from the scribbled signature. Tang Yan. Although the special effects team and director of the 3-body problem 1 were changed, most of the actors continued to use their previous roles. In Jiang Chen's impression, Tang Yan seemed to play a role called Chen Yufei, a cold female scientist of Japanese-Chinese descent. Turning to the back of the photo, where she had left her lip print before, there was a line of phone numbers written in ballpoint pen and her temporary address in Tokyo. Shinjuku Gracery Hotel, house number 1101. Smiling and shaking his head, Jiang Chen put the photo into his arms and threw it into the storage space under the cover of his clothes. "What are you laughing at?" After the interview, Liu Yao walked over from the entrance of the VIP lounge. "Nothing, just encountered an interesting thing," Jiang Chen said with a smile. "By the way, how is your relationship with the other actors and the crew?" "Other actors?" Liu Yao tilted her head. "They are all good. Where is Tang Yan?" Liu Yao looked at Jiang Chen suspiciously. Her expression changed, and she sat next to Jiang Chen, as if begging him in a gentle way, holding his hand and pouting, whispering, You like her? She is my good friend. Can you change? What are you thinking about?" Jiang Chen stretched out his hand and tapped her on the head. Looking at Liu Yao, who was covering her head and shrinking back, he smiled and said, "Do I look like the kind of person who would attack your friends?" Liu Yao smiled immediately, leaned close to Jiang Chen's cheek, and kissed him on the cheek. "You're the best," Jiang Chen said jokingly, touching the lipstick marks on his face. "Aren't you afraid that your makeup will get messed up?" "No. The interview is over." Liu Yao took Jiang Chen's arm and said affectionately, "Good friends? The entertainment industry is really complicated. However, Jiang Chen did not point it out. Instead of saying some things out loud, it is better to pretend that they never existed from the beginning. Chapter 970 The Follower. As time went by, other actors who had finished their interviews gradually walked in from the interview area. Almost everyone, after seeing Jiang Chen, would come forward to greet him enthusiastically or try to get close to him. Although Jiang Chen's circle is far from the entertainment industry, capital has no boundaries. After staying in the VIP lounge for a while, Jiang Chen took Liu Yao's hand and left the theater through the back door. His bodyguard had already driven the car to the back door and had been waiting there for a long time. He gentlemanly opened the door for Liu Yao, and after the beautiful woman got in the car first, Jiang Chen followed and sat in the back seat. Luca Farsiks, this must be tens of millions. Sitting in the car, Liu Yao touched the door with emotion and then reached out to touch the sofa. I've only seen it in magazines. Since being bought by Jiang Chen, Luca Automobile Company has grown from an unknown pure electric vehicle company to a large automobile manufacturer with business all over Asia and America. The luxury car models it launched have naturally been recognized by the world. For example, the pre-tax price of this Luca Farsiks pure electric car is more than 30 million. However, Liu Yao didn't know that the Luca brand was Jiang Chen's property. Your film salary must be 10 or 20 million, right? It would be difficult to buy one. Jiang Chen said with a smile and gestured to the driver, indicating that he should drive directly home. How can I spend all my royalties on cars? Liu Yao rolled her eyes at Jiang Chen. I can't even afford the 2 Maybachs and Lamborghinis you gave me. I'll help you maintain them. Jiang Chen said with a smile. It was already 11 o'clock in the morning, and 3 hours had passed since the premiere. The road conditions in Tokyo today were unexpectedly good. Jiang Chen did not encounter traffic jams and drove smoothly onto the highway to the suburbs. It is about 100 kilometers from Shinjuku to the villa at the foot of Mount Fuji, which is roughly equivalent to the distance from Wanhei City to Jia City. Although choosing such a remote place to stay has many inconveniences, it is better because of the beautiful environment. Not to mention that Jiang Chen is not particularly anxious. Except for the occasional passerby hikers, there were basically no people around. Once you leave Hachioji, you are almost out of Tokyo. There are mountains and fields all around. Except for the occasional vehicles passing by, there are basically no people at night. At this moment, the bodyguard sitting in the passenger seat suddenly narrowed his eyes and put his hand into his arms. The driver sitting in the driver's seat also noticed something strange, lowered his eyebrows slightly, and said to Jiang Chen in a deep voice, "Boss, someone is following us." Liu Yao looked around in fear, but couldn't see anything. Jiang Chen just raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "Oh, how many people?" The bodyguard sitting in the passenger seat reached out and tapped his sunglasses, and a layer of light blue operation interface suddenly spread out on the inside of the dark lens. 2 drones were released from the bottom of the car, flew out along the chassis of the car, and took advantage of the night to hover on both sides of the road at high speed, locking the stalkers with the bottom hanging camera. There are 4 vans in total, with about 20 to 30 people. There are no heavy weapons in the vans, mostly controlled knives, a bit like the Japanese mafia. The bodyguard on the co-pilot seat answered. Hearing the bodyguard's answer, Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head. "Mafia? You underestimate me." Since the Los Angeles incident, Jiang Chen has spent a lot of time on security work. Don't think that he only brought 2 bodyguards with him. These 2 bodyguards are the elite of the starring Marine Corps. Injecting D-level gene drugs is just the basis. Participating in the 2 Mindanao wars is just the threshold. And mastering at least 4 languages through the virtual reality learning system is not to mention. The one sitting in the co-pilot seat, with the same equipment, in a close-range confrontation, the 2 ghost agents are not his opponent. As for this Luca Farsiks, it has been modified by Future Heavy Industry. Not only is the chassis equipped with a drone terminal, but the shell has also been replaced with a titanium alloy material with a graphene lining. Even anti-material rifles can't penetrate its shell. "Do you want me to get rid of them?" the bodyguard in the passenger seat asked in a low voice, slowly taking out a pistol from his arms. Liu Yao was startled by the gun. The bodyguard saw that he had frightened his boss's lover and quickly put the gun back. "Let's pick a secluded place. There are many people here," Jiang Chen said lightly, looking at the van closest to him outside the window. "If you can avoid using a gun, try not to use a gun." "Yes." The bodyguard nodded and winked at his comrade who was driving next to him. The bodyguard sitting in the driver's seat nodded, turned the steering wheel, and turned towards the fork in the road. The car bumped when it got off the highway. Liu Yao looked at Jiang Chen with some concern, gently grabbed his arm, and asked nervously, "Is everything going to be okay?" "Don't worry." Jiang Chen gently patted her hand that was holding his arm. "It's just a few bugs. Solve them as soon as possible, so as not to be annoyed by them following me." After a pause, Jiang Chen curled his lips playfully. "Besides, I'm also very curious about who dared to touch my head." Seeing Jiang Chen's car change lanes, the people in the 4 vans following him were immediately delighted. They didn't realize that the crisis had come at all, and they turned the steering wheel and followed. They drove along the deserted mountain road for about half an hour, and when they reached a place where there were few people, 2 of the vans began to speed up and overtake. The 4 van sandwiched his car in the middle, and then slowed down, and forced Jiang Chen's car in the middle to stop. The Luca F6 stopped very cleanly, so cleanly that the people in the van were a little surprised. But accidents are accidents, and they didn't think the people in the car had any chance to resist. The door of the van opened, and about 20 hoodlums wearing black t-shirts, holding steel bars and short knives, surrounded Jiang Chen's car. Behind the crowd, a young man dressed as a gangster and wearing sunglasses finally jumped out of the van and walked in front of the younger brothers in a very stylish manner. Seeing his appearance as a gangster, Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head. It seems that gangsters in every country are the same, and they don't know what the sky is high and the earth is thick. The passenger door was pushed open, and the bodyguard in a suit got out of the car. Liu Yao looked at Jiang Chen with some concern. Or should we call the police?" "No need, leave it to Chen, Senator." Jiang Chen smiled and leaned back on the cushion, not worried about the bodyguard who got out of the car. "Just kidding." When Chen Sen was charging in the jungle of Mindanao with a rifle, these little gangsters didn't know which alley they were playing house. There were more than 20 Filipino soldiers who died at his gun. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 971. Kigam? That's my exoskeleton. In the dim light, there were 5 lonely cars parked on the empty road. 25 people and 1 person. The huge difference in numbers formed a sharp contrast in the night lit by car lights. Standing in front of more than 20 brothers, Major Ito twisted his neck slightly, making a crackling sound. People who know him know that when he makes such a move, it means blood will be shed. Major Ito, this is not his real name. His real name is Ito General. But later he became famous in this area of Tokyo, and with his daring and killing skills, he formed a gang called Longshan Group. The brothers in the group respectfully called him Major, and over time, he accepted this name. Later, he simply replaced his real name with this nickname, and then he had a nickname Major Ito. Today he was drinking with his brothers, and a phone call came in suddenly. The caller was Morita Yosuke, the manager of Morita Real Estate, who asked him to help catch a person, and offered 50 million yen. After hearing about the 50 million yen, the major called on his brothers to rush over with their weapons without saying a word. 50 million yen is enough to buy a life, not to mention that it was just a foreigner, and a Chinese woman at that. The target did not act alone after leaving the theater, but got into a valuable luxury car with a man. Although he saw this scene from a distance, Major Ito did not back down. Not to mention that there were only 2 bodyguards. Even 2 Bruce Lees could not beat more than 20 men swinging steel pipes and short knives. Ito was convinced of this. The foreign tycoon who fell into his hands last time hired a bodyguard who was said to have received military training from Blackwater. Isn't that just 1 head and 2 hands? 2 or 3 steel pipes thrown over, no matter how good your kung fu is, you will be knocked down. Looking at the man in a suit walking towards him, Major Ito raised his chin slightly and flicked his nails with disdain. Just you? Chen Sen didn't answer, his cold mouth slightly curled up, his muscles swelled, and his bones crackled. He hadn't beaten anyone for a long time, and those threatening and teasing eyes did not make him feel timid at all, but instead released the bloodthirstiness in his bones. Not realizing the danger at all, Major Ito sighed and waved his hand without interest. Okay, no more nonsense. Hand over the woman in the car. Well, leave the car too. Take your boss and get out. Get out? Chen Sen walked towards him without any intention of stopping, grinned, and said lightly, you should get out. Major Ito was slightly stunned, then furious, and waved his hand. Bagger. You Chinese pigs who don't know how to live or die. Brothers, come on. Shouting, the gang members of the Longshan group took turns to rush forward with their weapons. A steel pipe came at him, but Chen Sen didn't dodge. He raised his foot and kicked the Japanese man in the chest, sending him flying backwards and knocking down 3 or 4 people. The scene in front of them made the gang members who were about to rush forward stagnate. They had seen people who could fight, but it was the first time they had seen someone who could kick someone and knock down 2 or 3 people. This was not a sandbag. This was a man weighing more than 100 pounds. Major Ito's eyes almost popped out, and he had never seen such a good fighter. The man standing next to him just opened his squinting eyes slightly, but soon closed them, as if he didn't care. The offensive and defensive positions of both sides were completely reversed. Chen Sen rushed into the crowd alone, punching and kicking, punching and kicking. Even with a steel pipe dagger in his hand, no one could take a single move from him. These hooligans who were originally arrogant and insolent were now being beaten and running around crying. It was not that they did not hit him with steel rods, but these hooligans found that when they hit him with steel rods, it was like hitting a concrete wall. Instead of hurting him, they broke their knuckles. Is this guy made of iron? Everyone thought so in horror. Without any fancy moves, pure strength plus military fighting skills, Chen Sen did as Jiang Chen said, without pulling out a gun, and just punched and kicked. He beat all the 20 hooligans to the ground. In less than 2 minutes, there were only 3 people left standing on this road. Standing still, Chen Sen clapped his hands in fear. He did not chase those who turned around and ran away. He smiled at the frightened Major Ito and continued to walk towards him. The man who had been standing next to Major Ito without moving took a half step forward and blocked his master. There was a centipede-like scar on his forehead, which looked very ferocious. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and the pupils were like 2 green beans. The vicious gaze, like a venomous snake, swept across Chen Sen's face. Under the corner of his clothes, there was a Japanese sword about 5 feet long. That's it. The man said slowly, his hand on the handle of the sword. If you take another half step forward, I will cut off your arms. Sitting in the car, Jiang Chen leaned forward slightly and looked at the sword that was slightly unsheathed at the man's waist with interest. What era is this? There are still things like samurai? Liu Yao, who was sitting next to him, looked over there with a pale face, and her small hand tightly grasped Jiang Chen's hand. By the way, speaking of which, they seem to be coming for you? Jiang Chen looked at Liu Yao and squeezed her hand comfortingly. How did you get into trouble with these people? Liu Yao shook her head and suddenly seemed to remember something, biting her lower lip lightly and speaking. Maybe it was that psychopath before. Facing Jiang Chen's inquiring eyes, Liu Yao told him everything that happened outside the dressing room before he came. Including the man named Morita Yosuke, including how she rejected him, including the harsh words he left when he was rejected and left. After listening to it, Jiang Chen nodded to show that he understood, and then he suddenly pinched her butt. Ah! Liu Yao exclaimed in a low voice, looking at Jiang Chen in shame and anger. The driver sitting in the front seat closed his eyes and rested, fully playing the role of a wooden man, pretending to know nothing about the flirting between his boss and his lover. You pinched me. What are you doing? Liu Yao blushed and finally didn't dare to say the word but vaguely passed it over. I'll punish you. Jiang Chen stretched out his hand and pinched her nose. Next time, tell me about this kind of thing directly. Don't hide it in your heart. Luckily I was beside you this time. What if I wasn't? Although she was punished, for some reason, Liu Yao felt sweet in her heart. Pouting, she whispered in defense, "How could I know that he would find these people to deal with me? How can the Japanese be so narrow-minded?" Although it was a bit embarrassing, she was relieved a lot of her nervousness after being teased like this. Jiang Chen glanced at Liu Yao, who had calmed down, and then clicked on the holographic screen of his watch, selected the phone book, and casually called Sumitomo Kenichi. "Hello, Mr. Sumitomo? It's like this, if it's convenient, can you help me investigate someone?" Outside the car window, Chen Sen, who was standing in front of the man dressed as a Japanese samurai, just raised his eyebrows slightly. Seeing Chen Sen stop moving forward, Major Ito thought he was scared and regained some courage, shouting fiercely, "Get out of here. Mr. Shankman has learned the true teachings of Yin Liu. With this knife, even steel will be cut. Money is a good thing, but you have to live to spend it. Ma Long's Han Group doesn't care about your responsibility for injuring more than 20 of my brothers, and leave the woman in the car. Money is a good thing, but you have to live to spend it," Chen Sen repeated, grinning. "I'll give you this back." As he said that, he took a step forward and looked at the man dressed as a samurai provocatively. "I'm taking a step forward now. Let's see how you cut off my forearms." The Chinese Kigen is indeed unique. The blade moved slightly outward half an inch, and the man's slightly squinting eyes suddenly opened, shooting out a ray of light. "But the secret of my AI slash is to break one of its parts." Before he finished speaking, a white blade flashed by, slashing down from top to bottom. Liu Yao, who had just calmed down, immediately covered her eyes. She seemed to have foreseen the bodyguard's blood and flesh splattering. However, the crisp collision sound was heard, and the scene of the blade entering the flesh did not appear. After a long time, Liu Yao slowly opened her eyes and looked at the place in disbelief. The bodyguard just raised one arm and blocked the seemingly unstoppable slash. How is it possible? The Japanese warrior who put away the knife widened his eyes and looked at his broken blade in disbelief. However, before he had time to relieve the shock in his heart, a huge fist occupied his field of vision, punched him straight out, and tore off his remaining consciousness. What Kigen practice? Sitting in the car, looking at the Japanese warrior who was punched away, Jiang Chen laughed and scolded, "That's my exoskeleton. Even if an ordinary person puts it on, he can easily knock down a strong man. This is the power of technology. I thought it was kung fu." Liu Yao stuck out her tongue cutely and held Jiang Chen's arm tightly. "Let's go back quickly." "Yeah." Jiang Chen nodded with a smile. At the same time, outside the car window, the major, who had lost his last trump card, was in complete despair. Don't come over." Major Ito looked at Chen Sen, who was walking towards him with a horrified face. He felt that his legs were shaking uncontrollably. At this moment, he didn't care about his face anymore. He screamed, Big brother, I was wrong. I beg you, don't hurt me." Chen Sen looked at him with a grin, like a cat looking at a mouse cornered, and walked towards him slowly, begging for mercy incoherently. Major Ito staggered back. He wanted to turn around and run away, but his legs didn't obey him, and he fell to the ground in embarrassment. Struggling to get up, his hand randomly grabbed to the side, but grabbed the tip of the knife with a curled blade, cutting his hand with blood. "Ah!" He screamed and shook off the blade. Looking at Chen Sen standing in front of him, beads of sweat poured out from Major Ito's forehead. At this moment, he no longer looked like a gangster. Chen Sen raised his fist, but before he dropped it, he smelled a foul smell. The boss of the Long's Han Group was so scared that he peed his pants and fainted. "Coward." After cursing, Chen Sen retracted his raised fist, straightened the collar of his suit, and turned back to walk towards the car. However, at this moment, the alarm sounded not far away. Chen Sen stopped and looked back. Not far away on the road, red and blue lights were flashing. Soon, two police cars that arrived late braked and stopped by the roadside. The car door opened, and several policemen quickly got out of the car and shouted a few words to Chen Senator. Seeing the man who got out of the police car first, Jiang Chen, who was thinking about whether to call a lawyer, suddenly looked strange. This world is too small. The last 2 days for the double monthly ticket. Dalio who has tickets. Please give some monthly tickets for the sake of the National Day holiday. Chapter 972 Entertainment Program. After coming out of the high-end club in Ginza last time, Aoi Usuji's life fell into a double trough. In terms of career, her job was transferred from downtown Tokyo to Hachioji, a rural area in Tokyo. Obviously, the backstage of the club did not let her go, otherwise it would be impossible to explain why she was demoted without making any mistakes. When she thought that the other party's hand had reached the police system, Aoi Usuji couldn't help but feel a chilling fear in her heart. As for her feelings, she could no longer face her boyfriend as usual after losing her virginity, so that her suspicious boyfriend suspected that she had an affair, and after slapping her, he decisively chose to break up. Let's break up, life doesn't matter anymore. After seeing the dark side of society, Miss Usuji once thought about committing suicide. After spending more than a year in this muddle, she finally cheered up again. She decided that, no matter how dark and corrupt Japanese society was, she would be worthy of the police badge on her shoulder. Then within 2 months, she ran into an acquaintance on this Hachioji country road. "What's wrong, sir?" Seeing her long-legged beauty boss frozen in place, the police officer who was about to step forward to question her looked at her in confusion. 5 or 6 meters away, the back door of the Luca Far 6 parked between 4 vans had been opened at some point. With the bright headlights, she saw a man in a suit looking at her with a smile. "No, nothing." Facing Jiang Chen's smile, Usuji's body trembled instinctively, but she finally walked forward and said to Jiang Chen coldly, "You are suspected of gathering a crowd to fight. Please come with us." Several police officers cast their eyes behind Usuji, revealing strange expressions. It was the first time they saw this female boss transferred from downtown Tokyo biting her tongue when talking to a suspect. "Gathering to fight?" Jiang Chen smiled and took a step forward, scaring Shangshan Kui to shrink back instinctively. Facing the tense expression due to showing off, Jiang Chen smiled and continued, "Officer Shangshan, don't say anything nonsense. Before you got here, I didn't even get out of the car. How could I be involved in a fight? Moreover, anyone with a discerning eye can see that it was these little hooligans who started it first." The expressions of the policemen standing behind were even more strange. Why did this man know that their boss's surname was Shangshan? Officer Shangshan didn't seem to introduce himself just now. Forcing himself to retreat, Shangshan Kui said coldly, "Where is the evidence?" "Evidence?" Jiang Chen smiled. In fact, at his level, many things don't require evidence at all. There is something called diplomatic immunity. Even if he really did something against the will of heaven and earth, according to the Vienna Convention, Japan would at most deport him back to his country and never allow him to enter the country again. But is this possible? Even if he was the first to make a move, Japan would do everything it could to clean up his mess. After all, this is a critical period for the two sides to negotiate on the power issue. However, it would be too boring to directly raise the banner of diplomatic immunity. Jiang Chen gestured to the bodyguard sitting in the driver's seat. "Show the evidence to Officer Shangshan." The bodyguard nodded and pushed open the car door. Soon, a tablet was stuffed into Shangshan Kui's hands. The above is a picture taken by the dashcam. You can clearly see that it was the man lying on the ground who peed his pants who made the first move. Walking to Shangshan Kui's side, Jiang Chen looked at the shaking hand holding the tablet, and a smirk appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Officer Shangshan, can you hold it steady? I'm afraid you'll drop my tablet." Startled by Jiang Chen's sudden approach, Shangshan Kui almost threw the tablet in her hand. Looking at Jiang Chen with an innocent expression angrily, she involuntarily took another half step back. Shangshan Kui realized that she was in a state of panic, closed her eyes, and took a few deep breaths. Finally calming down her disordered breathing, she opened her eyes and said in a deep voice, "As evidence, I need to bring the tablet back to the police station to make a backup copy. The dashcam can prove your innocence, but your bodyguard must go with us to the police station to make a statement. I hope you can cooperate, sir." "Whatever." Jiang Chen made an indifferent expression, then looked at Chen Sen. "Then please accompany Officer Shangshan Kui on this trip." Chen Sen nodded and answered neatly, "Yes, boss." Jiang Chen nodded, looked at Shangshan Kui again, and suddenly sighed exaggeratedly. I deeply regret the security situation in your country. In particular, the indiscriminate slander of your police has damaged my reputation. It seems that I have to rethink whether your country has the investment value commensurate with the title of developed country. At this point, Jiang Chen paused, hid his smirk behind his back, turned his back to Shang Shen Kui, and said to himself, well, this is an investment involving tens of billions of dollars. I can only apologize to the Sumitomo Group and the Japanese Energy Agency. TSK, what a pity. When she heard about the Sumitomo Group, Shang Shen Kui's heart, which had finally calmed down, suddenly skipped a beat. As a Japanese, she couldn't be unaware of the political power behind the 6 major conglomerates in Japan. Not to mention that she was just a small police officer. Even her immediate superior, the director of the Tokyo Police Department, could not bear the anger of the Sumitomo Group. Wait a minute. Seeing Jiang Chen getting in the car, Shang Shanki was about to stop him, but the Luca F6 had already started its engine and left the road. Looking at the back of the car, Shang Shanki's lips were tightly clenched together, his shoulders were shaking constantly, and tears were about to fall out. Why do you bully me like this? Isn't it enough to hurt me so badly? Do we have such a big grudge? When do we leave? Chen Sen said expressionlessly like a wooden man. Now, squeezing out these 2 words from his teeth, Shang Shanki turned around and walked quickly towards the police car. In the Luca F6, Jiang Chen and others had returned to the highway leading to the villa at the foot of Mount Fuji. Why are you bullying me like this? Liu Yao smiled and covered her mouth. She punched Jiang Chen's shoulder with her fist. She's just a police officer, and you're the richest man in the world. I don't know why. Jiang Chen spread his hands. I just suddenly felt that I wanted to see what that self-righteous face would look like when he showed a frustrated expression. So I spoke up. Don't be ridiculous. This is a business involving hundreds of billions of dollars. It won't be affected by this at all. Jiang Chen was just threatening her verbally. He never thought of using his power to embarrass her. As Liu Yao said, she was just a police officer. When the Sumitomo Group solves the problem with the Congress, the contract can be signed as it should be. After signing, he can leave this small island country. But Jiang Chen didn't expect that this girl was actually scared by his few words. It seems that the impression he left on her at the beginning was too deep. I didn't expect you to have a dark side. Liu Yao teased. Haha, it's just occasionally. Jiang Chen laughed. With a hint of mockery, the laughter blended into the night in the countryside. To him, everything that happened tonight was just an entertainment show that was not even troublesome. At this moment, this episode had come to an end. As for those who were hiding behind the scenes, he didn't need to do it himself. Someone would naturally clean up his butt for him. Chapter 973 An Unavoidable Decision. In the early morning, a ray of sunlight poured into the house. Lying in Jiang Chen's arms, Liu Yao, who had not changed out of the evening dress she wore last night, moved her little mouth, as if she was mumbling. Her smooth skin, like silk, was as beautiful as a jewel inlaid with gold in the beige sunlight. Master, breakfast is ready. Do you need me to bring it? Standing by the bed, Kaiangsha, dressed in a maid outfit of white silk and black skirt, woke Jiang Chen up with a sweet voice. Well, bring it. Okay, master, wait a moment. Looking at Kaiangsha's back as she turned away, Jiang Chen suddenly felt a light bite on his chest. Liu Yao's resentful eyes drifted over, and she drew circles on his chest with her fingers and said, I worked so hard to feed you, but you woke up early in the morning and looked at other women. What are you thinking about? Jiang Chen smiled and pinched her small nose. Liu Yao turned over and tried to sit up, but it seemed that she was still in pain. She frowned slightly, cried out ouch, and fell back. Don't force it, just lie down for a while. You idiot, so hard. Huh. You ask me to be harder, and you ask me to be harder. Jiang Chen said with a sly smile. Liu Yao blushed slightly. It was indeed her request, to be harder when holding hands. But at that time, her brain was not in a clear state, and she didn't realize how terrifying the force was. It was completely subconscious. So after waking up, she found that her hands were all pinched red by him. Enjoying this quiet time, Jiang Chen picked up the remote control and turned on the TV on the wall in front of him. The news was playing on TV. Although he didn't understand Japanese, his watch had an instant translation function. Morita Real Estate CEO Masao Morita was found to have evaded taxes, with the amount involved reaching billions of yen. The money and power transactions behind the scenes were shocking. His eldest son, Morita Yosuke, the heir of Morita Real Estate, was found to have colluded with Tokyo's underground black forces and repeatedly hired gangsters to engage in human trafficking, kidnapping and threats and other illegal activities. After receiving the report, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department has arrested the two. The father and son met in prison, hugged each other and cried bitterly. The scene was touching, and it also made people reflect that there must be something hateful about pitiful people. If I had known this would happen, why did I do it in the first place? On TV, Jiang Chen saw the man who had met him at the entrance of the cinema. In his impression, Mr. Morita was still wearing a white suit at the time, and he said to him, "Get lost?" Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head and changed the channel casually. This Sumitomo Kenichi was a good person. Jiang Chen remembered that he just mentioned Morita Yosuke casually last night and asked them to help investigate. As a result, they not only completed the investigation, but also diligently helped him deal with the person. For the big consortium that can influence the political situation in Japan, it is easier to deal with a real estate businessman whose ass is not clean than to kill a bug. Well, it saves me from having to do it myself. Watching the advertisement of future technology on TV, Jiang Chen stretched lazily. Suddenly remembering something, Liu Yao, who was lying on him, asked in confusion, "By the way, what exactly did you inject me last night?" A medicine that strengthens physical fitness, also has the effects of delaying aging, enhancing recovery, improving metabolic function, whitening and nourishing the skin. Jiang Chen explained simply. In fact, it is an E-level gene medicine, which he also injected into Sun Jiao some time ago. The higher the level of the gene medicine, the greater the risk of uncontrollable mutation, and vice versa. The lower the level, the safer it is. The safest is E-level, which is the so-called civilian level physical fitness enhancement medicine before the war. Strength is not the bigger the better, just enough is enough. For example, now, Jiang Chen has never considered injecting himself with a Class A gene drug with a mortality rate of more than 90%, although that thing can turn him into a true Superman. What about the other one? Liu Yao asked with her head tilted. It's for contraception. Liu Yao rolled her eyes and punched him in the chest in annoyance. After a while, Kyangsha brought breakfast and put it on the bedside table. Jiang Chen rarely enjoyed a luxurious and corrupt life. He lay on the bed and let the two women feed him. To be honest, Xiang Point Yan was quite Xiang Point Yan, but the feeling of being fed was not as comfortable as he imagined. Jiang Chen couldn't help sitting up and eating several times. After finishing the meal, Jiang Chen sat up from the bed and went to the bathroom to brush his teeth, wash his face and clean up. When he came out of the bathroom, Kyangsha had already held the iron suit in front of him respectfully. "Your clothes and the hostess's evening dress have been washed and hung up. Do you have anything else to do, master?" "No, I have a business meeting today and will be home at about 5 o'clock. I will have lunch outside, so you should prepare dinner." "Okay, master." Chiksha bowed slightly and said with a smile. Seeing Chiksha's well-behaved appearance, Jiang Chen nodded with satisfaction. He felt that this maid was good, so why not take her home one day? Although his villa was taken care of by drones, he always felt that leaving everything to machines was less fun in various senses. Sitting in the Luca Fa-6, Jiang Chen first sent Liu Yao to the Shinjuku Gracery Hotel, which was booked by the crew, and then told the driver to drive to the direction of the Prime Minister's residence. The Sumitomo Group is very efficient. When Jiang Chen arrived at the Prime Minister's residence, there was a person wearing a headscarf at the door, holding a banner with slogans such as "Abolish nuclear power" and "Restrain electricity prices" to protest to the Japanese Prime Minister. Police stood around to maintain order, and media from many countries were carrying cameras around, broadcasting the protest in front of the Japanese Prime Minister's residence to the world. In fact, judging from the slogans, the two arguments of this protest are completely contradictory. For an island country with scarce resources, nuclear power is almost an inevitable choice. Nuclear power is not cheap, but compared to Japan, which relies entirely on imports for oil and natural gas, nuclear power is a cheap option. In this case, there is no suspense about what kind of proposal the Japanese Prime Minister and the cabinet will discuss. When Jiang Chen saw the short Prime Minister again, he found that the word tired was almost written on his face. It was obvious that he had not slept all night last night, and he was probably in a meeting for the whole morning. Even if he was unwilling, the pressure from public opinion and Congress forced him to make a decision as soon as possible. Under the urging of internal and external factors, the Prime Minister made a satisfactory answer to Jiang Chen on an issue that would take 3 working days to make a decision under the normal process. We welcome starring trade to invest in Japan. We have no objection to the construction of the submarine power transmission cable. The only requirement is that the construction and maintenance of this submarine cable must be completed by Japanese companies. As compensation, we are willing to accept your request and bear 70% of the cost of the submarine cable construction project. Jiang Chen showed a genuine smile on his face and shook the hand extended by the Prime Minister in front of him. No problem. Then, happy cooperation. Chapter 974, Rave Reviews. After the negotiation with the Japanese Prime Minister, Jiang Chen went to the Shinjuku Gracery Hotel, which was booked by the crew. When he got on the elevator, he ran into Miss Tang Yan, who had left him her phone number. Tang Yan greeted him enthusiastically, but the expression between her eyebrows looked resentful. Obviously, she was still a little disappointed that Jiang Chen did not show up last night. Last night, she took a special shower, put on some light makeup, after taking a shower, handed in 2 bottles of expensive red wine at the hotel front desk, and waited by the bed for almost half a night. After exchanging a few words with Jiang Chen, the elevator soon arrived at the floor she was going to. After leaving a message saying I'll wait for your call anytime, she left the elevator and hurried away. Arriving on the 15th floor, Jiang Chen found Liu Yao's room, knocked on the door gently, and the door opened quickly. Seeing Jiang Chen, the eyes of the woman in a t-shirt and jeans lit up, and she immediately welcomed him into the house. Sit down first. I'll go get a glass of water. Looking at Liu Yao's back as she went to get some water, Jiang Chen glanced at the suitcase by the door and asked casually, are you packing? Well, the premiere is over. According to the crew's arrangement, we have another fan meeting in Hokkaido. After that, I will return to China. Liu Yao sat next to Jiang Chen with 2 glasses of water and said reluctantly, there's nothing to regret. My negotiations are over, and I'll leave in a few days. Jiang Chen rubbed Liu Yao's hair, looked at her thoughtful look, and said with a smile, what are you thinking about? Liu Yao puffed her cheeks playfully, supported her chin with both hands, and muttered, I'm thinking, when will we meet next time? What you said is, it's not like we won't see each other again after we say goodbye. If your schedule is okay, you can come to Singapore for vacation at any time. Jiang Chen said with a smile. That's true. Liu Yao grinned and hugged Jiang Chen's arm. Her beautiful eyes sparkled with a beautiful light. She said coquettishly, I'm leaving tonight. Before that, don't you want to do something? After having lunch with Liu Yao in the hotel restaurant, Jiang Chen looked at the time. Seeing that the time was almost up, Jiang Chen told her to be careful outside and said goodbye to her. When taking the elevator downstairs, Jiang Chen happened to meet director Wu Fan, so he asked about the premiere. According to director Wu, the response from the theaters was quite good. According to the questionnaire survey after the premiere, the audience who participated in the movie gave a high score of 8.9 points. As for the special effects, which are the most important for science fiction films, the audiences score each a terrifying 9.7 points. Incredible visual feast. The audience used these 2 words to summarize the modeling and CG production level of virtual image animation. Jiang Chen was not surprised to get such an evaluation. Virtual animation, which is capable of Hollywood-level production, has proven its ability in Iron Curtain of Time and Space. In addition, the unique and innovative VR modeling and shooting also allows many scenes in the movie to be performed by actors wearing helmets in a VR environment. Including overseas box office, we are fully confident that we can break the 2 billion mark. Director Wu assured Jiang Chen confidently. Director Wu looked a little embarrassed and coughed embarrassedly. Ahem. RMB. Domestic films still have a long way to go. It is obviously unrealistic to take off the hat that has been worn for more than 10 years with a single movie. But no matter what, this is a good start. Domestic films in the past did not even have the courage to challenge the theme of science fiction. After leaving the Gracely Hotel, Jiang Chen got on his Luca F6 and told the driver to go home directly. On the way home, Jiang Chen received a call from Sumitomo Kenichi. Mr. Jiang, are you satisfied with our handling of the matter? Very satisfied. Jiang Chen naturally knew that he was referring to Morita Yosuke's matter, so he smiled and said, your efficiency is impressive. A hearty laugh came from the other end of the phone. By the way, I wonder what the Prime Minister's reply to you is. The submarine power transmission cable has been decided, and you should receive the approval document soon. In addition, the Japanese government requires that the construction and maintenance units of the submarine cable must be Japanese companies. At this point, Jiang Chen's mouth curved and deliberately paused. Sure enough, Sumitomo Kenichi's heart warmed up when he heard the words. Although the income from this submarine cable is not as good as the profit from electricity imports, it is also a big piece of cake. Moreover, the government takes money from the construction and maintenance of the entire project, and the risk is almost zero compared to other projects. How could he, Sumitomo Kenichi, let go of such a high quality project? Submarine cable? Our Sumitomo group is fully capable of taking on this project. You see. Sumitomo Kenichi said hurriedly on the phone with a flattering smile. Of course, I admire your ability to do things. If nothing unexpected happens, this project will of course be handed over to you. Jiang Chen smiled and continued, but because the project needs to be reviewed by the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry and the Agency of Energy of Japan, everything must be done according to the procedures. We will open the bidding, and you can bid. As long as the price is not too outrageous, we will give priority to you as the construction party. Haha, thank you very much, Mr. Jiang. Sumitomo Kenichi said happily. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Chen took back the holographic screen. It doesn't matter who you choose, it's better to do Sumitomo Kenichi a favor. His cooperation with the Sumitomo group is quite pleasant, and that Sumitomo Kenichi is also very capable. If nothing unexpected happens, Jiang Chen doesn't mind continuing to cooperate with them. For starring trade and future group, choosing a family in Japan that is willing to cooperate as a spokesperson has considerable benefits in various senses. In addition, if Sumitomo Kenichi's status in the family becomes higher and higher, it will also be of great benefit to the cooperation between the two parties. Back to the villa, Jiang Chen threw his clothes to Chinatsu and then went to the bathroom to take a shower. The framework of the cooperation has been decided, and the next step is basically signing and discussing the details of the cooperation. These trivial matters do not need him to handle them personally. He has already instructed Starring Trade to set up a special project team to be responsible for the entire global power grid plan. 2 days later, the team responsible for contacting the Central Electric Power Company and the Sumitomo Group will arrive in Japan and stay here for a long time until the entire submarine transmission cable is completed. Soaking in the bathtub, Jiang Chen was planning what to do tomorrow while playing with the water. After washing for half an hour, he came out of the bathroom rubbing his hair with a towel. While he was taking a bath, the maid Chiksha had already brought the rich and delicious food to the table and was waiting respectfully at the door of the bathroom. Master, the food is ready. Putting the towel on the clothes that needed to be changed, Jiang Chen looked at Chiksha and nodded with satisfaction, smiling and said, well done, let's go eat together. Yes, master. With a standard maid smile, Chiksha followed Jiang Chen and went to the dining room with him. The food on the table was very rich, and Jiang Chen's appetite was excited. However, just when he picked up the chopsticks and was about to start eating, the doorbell rang in the living room next door. Jiang Chen looked at his watch and saw that it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, who on earth could be at the door at this hour? Chapter 975. If apologies are useful, what are the police for? Jiang Chen stood at the door of the villa with a nervous look on his face, holding a tablet tightly in his hands. The police car behind him, and the police uniform on his body, did not give her any sense of security, because the people living in it could ignore all this. Although this manor covering thousands of acres is magnificent, in her eyes at this moment, it is as gloomy and terrifying as a demon city. There was a voice in her heart shouting that there was a devil living inside. She wanted to turn around and run away countless times, but in the end she lost to the fear in her heart. Thinking of the news she saw in the morning, Ito-gen was taken away by the police officers from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department and 2 big men in black, and she couldn't help but feel despair in her heart. She had already interrogated Ito-gen that he was hired by Morita Yosuke to do this stupid thing. However, Morita Yosuke, who hired him, was thrown into prison early in the morning. What does this mean? Even if she was slow, she guessed that there must be something behind this. Then, the Tokyo Police Department sent people to take Ito away in an unconventional way. Rumor has it that Morita estate was maliciously acquired by Sumitomo Group. There is only one explanation. Everything Jiang Chen said that night was true. Biting her lower lip, a trace of determination flashed across her face, and she pressed the doorbell again. The gate of the villa opened, and standing in front of her was a girl in a maid outfit. The smile on her face was also very innocent, which made people feel good about her. In Usuji Aoi's mind, her image has been silently filled in as a poor girl who was forced by evil forces to submit to the devil. Come in, the master is waiting for you in the living room. Chinatsu smiled slightly and said politely in honorifics, "Master?" Mrs. Suji was slightly stunned and then cursed in her heart. This pervert. Crossing the stone brick road in the front yard of the villa, Chinatsu opened the door of the villa for her and politely invited her into the house. From the red carpet on the floor to the marble handrails of the stairs and the paintings with gold frames on the wall, all of them show the corruption of the bourgeoisie. In the living room of the villa, Shang Shanqi saw the man who made her sleepless all night. At this moment, he was smiling at her. Shang Shanqi put the tablet in her hand on the sofa beside her, staring at Jiang Chen's eyes, and said expressionlessly, "I'm here to return the tablet. The evidence has been copied." Jiang Chen responded to her gaze with a smile and whispered, "Just for this?" Biting her lip slightly, Shang Shanqi lowered her head slightly and spoke quickly. I misunderstood you yesterday. I'm sorry." After listening to her words, Jiang Chen smiled. "Miss Shang Chen, you are a policeman. You should know. If an apology can solve the problem, then what do we need the police for? What do you want?" The expression on her face froze, and Shang Shanqi immediately made a serious face and said coldly. However, she obviously got the wrong person. This majestic expression may be invincible when interrogating criminals, but it is useless to the man standing in front of her. Is this your attitude to apologize? Jiang Chen spread his hands innocently. "It seems that I need to call your boss and ask him. Are Japanese police so rude when enforcing the law?" The serious face that Shang Kui pretended to be strong suddenly collapsed, and the corners of her eyes softened into an arc of grievance in an instant. You embarrass me. Do you have fun? Very interesting. Otherwise I wouldn't embarrass you. Jiang Chen said so in his heart, but his expression did not change at all, and he continued with a smile. "I don't mean to embarrass you. But Miss Shang Chen, we all know that if you do something wrong, you have to pay the price, right? What do you want?" Shang Kui gritted her teeth and avoided his sight. She squeezed out these words from her teeth. "You know what I want," Jiang Chen said with a smile. Shang Kui's face turned pale and blue, and her lower lip was bitten by her teeth. Just when Jiang Chen felt that he had teased her enough and should send her away, lest the food on the table get cold, Miss Shang Chen seemed to have made up her mind and spoke in a cold tone. "I know, that's it, right? So aware?" Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and changed his mind. "Oh, it seems that you are ready. Anyway, it was him last time, so just think of it as another bite by the dog." Thinking of this, Shang Kui lowered her head in humiliation, tacitly agreeing with Jiang Chen's statement. "Can you help me?" Jiang Chen turned his eyes slightly, looked at Chinatsu who had been standing next to him, and smiled. "I need you to help me prepare some props." "Of course." With a brilliant maid-like smile, Chinatsu slightly lifted the hem of her skirt and said respectfully, "The master's orders are absolute to Chinatsu. Let me think. Some of these things should be available in the nearby town. Chains, whips, triangular wooden horses, ropes, small clips. Well, let me think. What else?" As he spoke, Jiang Chen smiled evilly and looked at Chinatsu from the corner of his eye. "That's all for now. You should know which store to buy it in." Jiang Chen did not suppress his voice when he spoke. He said this deliberately for her to hear. He was very curious whether she would turn around and run away in fear after hearing these. If she ran away, it would be fine. Anyway, he didn't plan to argue with this little girl. He would also return to China in a few days. If she didn't run away. Hehe, the body is still quite honest. What happened next? Just treat it as tonight's entertainment program. Not noticing the change in Jiang Chen's eyes, Shang Shanqi only felt numb all over, and her hands and feet trembled like cramps. The door was behind her, and was not locked. She wanted to turn around and run away. She was confident that she could escape. But for some reason, her feet seemed to be glued to the red carpet, and could not move at all. The breeze blew, mixed with a hint of jasmine. The innocent-looking maid walked past her and went to the neighboring town to buy torture instruments to punish her according to the so-called master's order. At this moment, she and he were the only two people left in the living room of the villa. "Come here." The devil waved at her with a smile. Woo. A whimpering sound came out of her throat. Although she resisted, she subconsciously moved forward half a step. Seeing her obedient behavior, the devil smiled even more cheerfully and waved at her. She moved forward step by step with resistance. For some reason, as the devil got closer and closer to her, a feeling of heat suddenly surged into Miss Shang Shan's heart. She clenched her hands tightly on her chest, feeling the throbbing heart, as if it didn't belong to her at all. What she didn't know was that at this moment, behind the abyss-like fear in her heart, a hint of different colors sprouted like a poppy blossoming. Jiang Chen, who was sitting opposite her, smiled even brighter. Occasionally, just occasionally, especially when facing a masochist, he would sometimes reveal his unknown side. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.